Welcome into an all-new episode of Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson, Karbley, and Ricky Raines. I thought the title graphic was fitting this week. Ricky did a hell of a job with it, with Germany coming up this weekend. Gentlemen, how you guys doing tonight?
I'm good. We'll get into it, but Curtis and I went to the game, had a really good time. Finally left Bank of America Stadium with some positives and a win. So it was nice to leave and be able to talk shit to Saints fans. Anytime you come off a win as a Carolina Panthers fan, it leaves you feeling pretty good.
Yeah, I'm jealous that y'all got to go to that one, man. That's an all-timer right there. Bryce Young back at home at the bank, right? Beats the Aints. I mean, really, like that's enough right there to be like super into that game. But then afterwards, just hearing everything that kind of came from that New Orleans football team and all of the chaos that fell out, man, I absolutely love it, and I'm jealous y'all got to do it. But I'm glad y'all had a good time, man. And now we get to talk about Germany and drink a bunch of German beer and stuff together. So this is going to be fun tonight.
Hell yeah, let's talk about that quickly here. I'll start. I tried to go with something bigger, some big Stein. Bryson got me this as a gift. It's a Budweiser. It's full of this Spartan Oktoberfest. It's brewed in Munich, Germany. Pretty good beer. So that's what I'm drinking this evening. What do you guys got going on?
I'm starting with a black lager, Germany's #1 black lager. I'm not going to try to say the name, but it is very good. Really a huge fan of black beer, but really enjoying that one. And then I do have another one in here. It is another lager from Germany. I figured I would go with beers of where we're traveling to, as not us in particular. I wish we were, but the Panthers are our team. So so far so good on my end.
I don't know if the three of us traveled to Munich for a Panthers game on like Wednesday. I don't know that we're making it until Sunday for the football game. So it might be the safest thing for everyone that the three of us are here. I did the same thing that you guys did here. I've got a Edelstoff that is from Augustiner Brewery, which is the oldest brewery in Munich. So I would imagine that this is probably on some of those little like tour trips that they do and all of that kind of stuff. And I got this giant, legitimate German Stein that I poured the first beer, and I'm telling you what, man, like it filled up to like here. So this is like almost 4 beers in this thing, and it's like doing curls while I'm doing the show with you guys. But then I also get to reward myself with every single one. So I'm having a good time already, man, and we get to talk about Panthers wins. So yeah, German this thing up, right?
Absolutely. The chat is already off to a strong start. We got Making True Money. Let's go. Keep pounding. C3 Anthony, what's up, y'all? Also, Panthers Pickle, what's up? Alex running the chat here. Not drunk this time though. Yeah. But I bring up the chat because big things are happening. We're stepping up to the next rung of the ladder here. We do now have a super chat for the podcast. If you guys look in the chat, it's that little money symbol with a box around it on YouTube. So if you would and you want to send us some money, we will gladly take it. It'll be used not only to support our podcast and giveaways, but also I know at some point I'm going to probably need to upgrade and get a mic like Ricky at some point. So I think that'll be beneficial, but I think it'll go to what we try to do and provide you guys every week and just provide quality content. And that's the goal through this all. So yeah, there's a super chat. There's also super stickers. We will give you guys praise for that throughout the episode. We do appreciate it. But let's get into it. Let's talk.
Before we start, can I say how cool I do find it too that Ant and Pickle are up in here together, like coming in like a C3 like group, like, hey, just letting it be known we're here, we're watching the show. Like, what up, C3? Shout out to them for that.
Absolutely.
And there we go, the Bow Body Show. Alex is off to a strong start.
How about that?
We do appreciate that, Alex. We
Thanks for at
appreciate
least making the Bow Body Show name look good for what you're doing here.
And also, just while Alex is here, in the super chat, he tailed us last week in our bet. He didn't go specifically of what we had, but he was kind of feeling out what we had said, and he ended up winning quite a chunk of change. Alex, if you want to let us know what you made in the chat, and let the folks know in the chat, I do think you won, I think close to $100 or more. From tailing us
is
last
$1.99 all you can break us off for getting you that fat sack of money, man? Come on. No, I'm kidding. Thank you very much for that. Look, don't put that out there like that and then give us a $2 tip. That's crazy. Don't you work in the hospitality industry? Hey, by the way, shout out Lo, Made for More up there. What up, Lo? I'll be on the pregame tomorrow. Can't wait to do that too, man. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
But we do appreciate that. Let's get into the game this past weekend. Bryce Young obviously coming back, gets the win against the Saints. Let's start with his play, guys. And Bryson, I'll start with you. What did you think in his second straight start after the benching?
Progress, man, progress. And I would say significant progress in this game from weeks 1 and 2. And it's still a step forward from his previous game. So I think, Curtis and I were fortunate enough to go to the game. We had really good seats. Shout out to Matt. He'll probably be in the chat at some point tonight. He hooked us up with some good seats. And it was fun, man. It was fun to see Bryce Young look confident, look like he was comfortable, look decisive. Going back through and watching some of the breakdowns, the QB school, there were still some footwork issues that need to be taken care of. But with Bryce Young, his footwork is never going to be perfect. It hasn't been since he's been a quarterback playing football. So I think overall, though, in QB school in particular, his takeaways were he played pretty damn well. And to say that for Bryce Young, it's been a minute. His prior game was good, but I think this game was definitely promise. It was promise, man, and that's why all three of us were on the same page that they should move forward with Bryce as the starter. And I'm sure we'll get into it in a little bit, but I think just coming away from it knowing he's not afraid to throw the ball deep, and he hit some really good throws over the middle, which weeks 1 and 2 he wasn't even looking at the middle of the field. I think that's just awesome to see for the Carolina Panthers and the fan base, that a lot of people have moved off of Bryce already. And I think for him to come in with really the coaching staff not behind him, a lot of the fan base moved off of him, and to look confident and look like he's taken a step forward is impressive in my opinion. And I think it's going to continue to do that. I think he's back. I really do. And I think he's going to continue to show progress week in and week out. Now, it was a Saints defense that was missing some starters. I'm not going to take away from that, especially in the secondary. But again, this was a Saints defense, even minus 2 starters in week 1, that absolutely destroyed Bryce Young and played partially into his benching by week 2. So for him to come back and put that tape on the field, I was extremely impressed with, and I have hope moving forward that he's the quarterback for the future.
And before we go any further, we failed our first super chat ever. So I want to cheers to the first super chat ever of this podcast, to you, all three of us here.
Look, I even got
they say Guten Tag, Ich liebe dich, beer, whatever it is. Cheers, boys. Ricky, do you want to keep things going here with the Bryce Young? What were you impressed with on Sunday?
Yeah. Bryson touched on a lot of it. I'm probably a little bit more bullish about saying that I think he's back because I do want to see string it together, right? And I think that is a critical part if we're talking about his overall development, because one of the things that was so divisive, I feel like, especially even in our own fan base, right, was that there was a faction of fans that were looking for the good things, the silver linings, that were taking positives away from Bryce's rookie season, his performances, understanding the context and the situation that he was in, while also giving him responsibility and accountability for his role. But the difficult part in that division was there was only about 3 performances that you could really point to and say, I think that's an unquestioned solid performance, right? Everything else took a lot of nuance and a lot of like context added into the performance to get to a place where you could feel comfortable and confident about what Bryce Young did on the field. I think that this past, now Alex is just showing off. I think that this past performance against the Saints, and Bryson said it, they were out 3 starters in the secondary. That's legitimate. You can bring that up, and I think it's a fair thing to point to because guess what? We would do it, right? Like if we were down JC Horn, which we have been a lot, and we like to bring that up. If it was CJ Henderson out there as our cornerback 1, we would let everybody know that that's why they got 330 yards passing. And Bryce didn't throw for that. Bryce threw it for 171. And you look at his passer rating, and it's almost the same as it was in Denver. And I thought that he looked head and shoulders better, and that's not a short joke. I thought he looked head and shoulders better against the Saints than he did against the Broncos. Now, the Broncos is a better defense, but Bryce looked confident. And confidence is what we have all preached. We want him to give individual shots when his receivers are one-on-one. We want him to be able to read and find those individual shots. And I thought that he did it, man. You brought up the quarterback school, JT O'Sullivan. He talked about that pass to JT Sanders. The pass that he had pressure in his face immediately. I mean, it was bearing down on him in his face mask. And I don't know necessarily that he intended it, just like JT O'Sullivan points out. I don't know that he necessarily intended on this being some sort of like back shoulder ball placement, but he did understand that JT was going to take that wheel and get behind that defender. And he knew that it was going to be his 6'4", strong-handed tight end, one-on-one with a defensive back. That kind of recognition, I think, is awesome, and that's what I've been looking for from Bryce. I also think that you got to add in the context of the drop touchdown by David Moore, the lone interception on Bryce Young's box score. Anyone that wants to bring that up clearly did not watch the game, because that interception, it was one of the freakiest individual defensive plays, right? Look, we just had that interception on the Jalen Coker pass in the Denver Broncos game that we all were like, that's a hell of a play. And now you look at this one against Xavier Legette, the 2-name cornerback, I can't even remember his name, man. I feel awful to say that. It's John something. He just took it away from Xavier Legette. Now, X said he's got to make those plays, right? Come down strong. That's one of your superpowers, and that's one of the reasons you were drafted. But you take those 2 plays in consideration, Bryce Young had maybe a top 7, top 8 day in the NFL at quarterback. And I don't really care who you played. You got to play well against them. And I thought he did, man. So I thought it was a terrific performance. I'm glad that he's going to get another chance. I think this will be a more difficult task against the New York Giants this week in Munich.
Guys, before we go further, the super chat, Alex, you are showing
$50. That's
49. Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever get to this level again. So cheers again. Drink up. We appreciate it.
I feel like we have to pull a George Costanza here and just quit while we're ahead,
I'll touch on Bryce Young. You guys have said a lot of it, but I'm seeing more and more each game. He's taking shots he didn't take in previous starts and last year, and that's the biggest improvement for me. And he's been pretty decisive with the ball, and that's what's impressed me most about him. Ricky brought up, and I was going to mention the same thing, that pass to Sanders. I got to catch QB school a little bit, first like 15 minutes of it. And that pass that he did with guy barreling down on him, I don't think he makes that throw in previous opportunities. So to see him make that was it gave me a lot of more confidence in him and what he's grown from this benching. The pass to Legette that got picked off, I don't know if he makes that again. And I think we're seeing more and more over the past couple of games, his deeper throws, the 20 yards and beyond, they're there. And if they're not there, they're very damn close. It's not a massive overthrow like I believe has happened in the past. These balls are pretty on target. And I think that that is huge. And his connection is growing every single week with the young guys, JT Sanders, Jalen Coker, and Xavier Legette. And it's only going to increase as he gets more opportunities to start. So, yeah, I thought he had a very impressive game. Like Ricky said, I mean, should have had a touchdown to David Moore. You had the nice deep, you had the 30-plus yarder to Legette that should have been caught. I mean, you're looking at probably 230, 250 passing yards if those are completed. So, yeah, he had a heck of a day, and I get it. The Saints starting corners were out that game. That certainly helped. But, it's so exciting to see both the young talent that Carolina brought in the draft with Bryce Young, and they're all ascending together. And we're seeing impact with draft picks that we haven't seen before under the previous regimes. So I'm getting more and more excited, drinking the Kool-Aid and every bit of it so far. But I did want to touch on one guy on offense, kind of negatively, I guess, and that's Miles Sanders, because, again, it just seems like this team time and time again is, I don't know if they were trying to bump his trade value by putting him out there, but I think we can all agree that this guy is playing way too much on the offensive side of the ball in some key moments in the game, and it just seems like it never works out when they go to him. So what are your guys' thoughts on Miles Sanders and, his involvement with this team moving forward?
I do not want to see 6 on the field again. I think I'm the same way that you are with 80, Curtis. I mean, every single play, it feels like, goes for negative yards. I think at one point in the game, he had like 3 touches for like negative 12 yards or something like that. And they were continually bringing this guy in as a third down back, which I think automatically sets the offense back because he's not a threat to run the ball. He's not a threat to catch the ball. He's not a threat to block. He's not a threat to stand there and breathe. I mean, he's like a ghost. And to continually involve him at a high level, I tweeted at like the reporter. I was like, please ask Canales why, because he has not proven anything last year or this year that shows that he can be a consistent, valuable weapon on the field. Like, get other guys chances. Raheem Blackshear, Jonathan Brooks is coming back now. Hopefully that offsets this and we don't see Miles Sanders at all. I hope so. I mean, if we do, there's something going on there. Maybe 80 and 6 have shared secrets, and that's why they're on the field together. But I'm done with Miles Sanders. The experiment's over. It's been over. Please stop involving him because he is not doing anything positive on the field to help his team win football games.
Yeah, you bring up maybe 80 and 6 or, pillow talking, if you will, almost in a way. I'd love to know the room assignments out there in Munich. Like they're not in there together, are they? I don't want them giving any more secrets of the trade. Here's the thing with the Miles Sanders performance last week specifically. There is enough that when you watch the tape to show that it's not 100% on Miles Sanders for the failure of some of those plays. There were some execution lapses in blocking. I think that the play call in general in some of those situational plays was the problem, right? Because sometimes, man, it's really hard to get in between of, is it the play call? Is it the execution? Or is it an individual performance by a player, right? Those are 3 elements that you have to look at when something goes as awful as most of those Miles Sanders plays went. Miles doesn't do himself any favors as far as his vision behind the line of scrimmage. Miles likes to move before he looks. That's detrimental as a running back, specifically for what Canales is asking his running backs to do. My only thing that I can assume or take from his usage, especially on these critical downs, man, it's almost like they try to hide him And now look, early in the season, they did these like rotational series. Remember? Like they would have Chuba go for 2 series, and then Miles would go for 2 series. And they would kept that going for a couple of weeks until I don't know why it's giving me a thumbs up, but I appreciate it, StreamYard. They would do that, and like that was a weird little charade that they did too. But now it seems like they're saying, hey, we don't want him on first and second down. He's not effective. But when we're in crunch time and we need a big play, why not, dust off the old 6 and bring him in there, man? Like that's better than our workhorse running back who's on the jugs machine for 30 minutes every single day. So that he's a realistic threat as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He's been fine in pass pro, Chuba has, in my opinion. He had a couple missed blocks in the last 3 weeks, but I also saw him take on individual blockers and make the right read, pick up those gaps, and protect for his quarterback. Miles Sanders, man, I just don't know. I think there's no way that they were trying to showcase his trade value. His contract mitigates any trade value he may have. No one's giving you anything, man. They'll give you, we all make this joke, right? But they'll give you a 2019 14th rounder, right? Something that doesn't even exist. They'll trade you for a box of Tic Tacs. But I think with Jonathan Brooks coming back into the mix, and you don't know how much he's going to play. You don't even know if he is going to play Sunday. But Miles Sanders' days are numbered with Jonathan Brooks staring down that pipeline of entering that running back rotation. I don't hate Miles Sanders. He's in a situation that the team has put him in. I just prefer not to see him playing on the football field for the Carolina Panthers.
I want to talk about another guy on offense quickly here, and it just popped in my head while you guys were talking about Miles, and that's, are you at all surprised at how many touchdowns Legette has scored this year? He's got 4 on the year. He's third amongst rookies. Marvin Harrison Jr. and Brian Thomas Jr. both have 5. So he's third on the list. He obviously wasn't drafted third of the wide receivers. I want to say he was 5th or 6th drafted wide receiver in this year's or this past draft. Ricky, maybe I'll start with you on this. Are you at all surprised with the four scores already for him and top 3 amongst the rookies?
I don't think so. But I think that some of that is also because look at what's happened with the wide receiver room, right? Adam Thielen has been injured. Deontay Johnson was traded. And if you remember back to what Xavier Legette snitched on Dave Canales for in the pre-draft process, is that they intended to use him in a Mike Evans-esque role. Well, what is Mike Evans, especially early in his career, what was his calling card? Now, Xavier Legette is not 6'5". He's not that tall, lanky dude that Mike Evans was, but he's a physical specimen, right? He is literally stronger than just about any defensive back you're going to go up against. And so what his quarterbacks are doing is they're doing a really good job, especially in these short yardage situations, identifying that he's one-on-one and relying on Xavier Legette to understand leverage and to use his strength to shield off defenders. And that's what we've seen on a lot of these catches. That's exactly what he's done, is reinforcing separation. He doesn't create a lot, but he is really good, man, with his innate timing of reinforcing that separation. And that's a really good trait for a big wide receiver like him to have. So I'm not super surprised by it, but I'm encouraged by it because I still don't even think that they've scratched the surface with how they can use Xavier Legette.
Yeah, I agree. I would say from my comments last week saying he's exceeded my expectations to this point, I would say that I am, just from a pure number standpoint, him being top 3 in the league amongst rookie wide receivers, a little surprised to this point. But like Ricky mentioned, I think obviously the injuries and the trade has played into kind of thrusting him into that role and, making him work for it. And honestly, he could have 5 if he didn't have that one where he like kind of jumped for it and like caught the ball out of bounds at the back of the end zone where he was wide open. So he could have 5 right now, tied for, I guess, first in the NFL for rookie wide receivers. So at this point, I would say I'm a little surprised, but also not, just based off of his talent level. I like Ricky mentioned, I think he's still scratching the surface on what he can become. He's only going to get better with the more game reps he has, live game reps, and in Carolina figuring out how to use him in proper ways. So I think overall it's exciting to see what he's put on the field, and I hope he continues to build off of that.
While we're talking about it, or while you guys were talking, I'm going to pull up here. This was our predictions preseason. And here we go. I'm shocked. If you look at mine, I had Leggett with 3 touchdowns the entire season. Bryson and Ricky were a little bit higher than me. But for him to have 4 through 10 weeks, I mean, he's almost catching 1 a game at this point, these last couple weeks. And, with Deontay gone and now Mingo, and we'll get into that trade a little bit later, I think the sky's the limit for him, and I think he could really add to this. So I think, Kevin and you, Ricky, had 6 at the time?
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, didn't we even say, too, that if things went south and he saw more snaps, that number would even be higher? I feel like we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know.
So
maybe it's just a German beer.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was interesting. We'll revisit this list later on, but I thought since we're talking about it, it'd be interesting just to pull it up for a second. But I mean, I'm excited. I think he's got a ton of potential, and him and Bryce are starting to build that connection. And if he can reel in some of these catches, I know he had a drop, I think, in Denver, and then he had the one that Bryce. I mean, the DB made a really good play on it for the Saints, but he's shown a lot of promise early on, and obviously Jalen Coker as well. And I got to shout out my boy Jatavion Sanders, because I think we truly do have a tight end. And honestly, I don't know, I can't even say this, but there's one little sliver thing that 80 does well, is that when he's on the field, JT Sanders goes off. It just seems like when those guys are playing together, I don't know if he's just taking over for the blocking duties or what, but I feel like since 80 has come back, JT has really taken off. Have you guys picked up on that at all? I think I touched on that last week. I just feel like he has kind of and I honestly think there was a block this past week that, like, his blocking's getting better too, which, again, I know it's only bits and pieces, but I think there was a couple blocks this past week where I thought he held up pretty well. And then I'm talking about Sanders. And I can't remember the plays, but I think there was 1 or 2 that stuck out. But again, I think, Ricky, we talked about it after the game.
Yeah.
That's not something you saw in college from him when he hopped over the guy.
No, the yards after the catch, man, was exciting on that play. And one of the really good blocks that you're referring to was on the game-winning touchdown run from Chuba Hubbard. He was involved on a one-on-one block, man, and he stonewalled his guy. There's also examples in that game itself of his blocking issues, but you take that, man. Like, we're talking about our pass-catching tight end. You ask, like, have we noticed anything about Ian Thomas and Jatavion Sanders being on? I'll give you guys a little behind the scenes, and not Curtis and Bryson behind the scenes, but everyone watching and listening. Before we came on this show, before I showed everybody my comically large stein of beer here, Curtis also had a glass stein, and it was a little bit smaller. That's what reminds me of Jatavion Sanders and Ian Thomas. They're both steins, right? Like, they're both German beer steins, but Jatavion Sanders is gigantic, and he's full of beautiful gold beer that looks promising and looks like you want something to do with that. Whereas Ian Thomas is over there, and it just looks a little bit like, yeah, I mean, you're not gonna get anything out of that. Like, that thing is about empty, and they're doing last call. Like, you're not gonna have it. So maybe it's one of those, a bright light against a dim light. So it just always makes him shine when they're on there together. But all jokes aside, it's also probably because they're not asking Jatavion Sanders to take on the blocking duties when they're out there together. And we talked about that even before the season, about how much Tremble would help him in that regard, even because he's just not a great blocking tight end right now. And they are going to need somebody to be in there to handle those responsibilities if they're calling passing concepts with him on the field.
Yeah, and I think if you go back to the episode when Ian Thomas was expected to play, I think Ricky made a point about Ian Thomas being on the field with Tremble and with Jatavion Sanders and opening up their ability to catch the ball, because they're going to ask Ian Thomas to do the blocking and allow these other guys to catch the ball. So shout out to Ricky there. He definitely called that. But yeah, Jatavion Sanders, man.
We need to quit mentioning that guy's name, though. Not Ricky, the other guy.
I was about to say, Curtis, what's the beef, dude?
But yeah, Jatavion Sanders, rough start to his rookie season, but he has really turned it around. I mean, last game, I think when we were at the game, I had mentioned a stat to Curtis. I can't remember the exact stat, but I know the yardage or the total yardage for Jatavion Sanders to this point is more than any other tight end for the Panthers since Greg Olsen. And we're like, what, week 9, week 10? He's got 285 yards receiving. So not a substantial amount, but that shows the lack of talent that they've had at that position, or the lack of ability to get that position the ball. So I think, again, another guy like Leggett, like Coker, a lot of these young guys stepping up, playing well, continuing to get better week in and week out. That's really all we can ask for as a team that's got 2 wins and looked like we were heading in a bad direction with the complete teardown. But I mean, it's still not all sunshine and rainbows, but it's looking like some of this young talent that we brought in is really looking like key pieces moving forward for the future.
Let's talk about the offensive line for a minute, because there was some switch up, obviously, this week, some shuffling at both the center and left tackle position. Brady Christensen kicked out to protect Bryce's blind side, and then we obviously have Cade Mays in the middle. What were you guys' thoughts on that O-line that did some shuffling this week?
Yeah, I think I like Christensen at left tackle. I thought he played really well. That guy can fill in anywhere on that offensive line. He is such a great piece to have for depth, and we may lose him to a team that wants to make him a starter if he's doesn't have a starting position here in Carolina moving forward, which really sucks. But yeah, I thought he filled in nicely, and really, when your name's not called a lot, I think that's good for an offensive lineman. If I remember correctly, I think he did have a penalty, but no obvious missed blocks that I saw. No bad whiffs, so that's positive. Cade Mays, I thought, played really well as well. Some questionable snaps to Bryce, I think a couple low ones, but for a guy that was on the practice squad for the Giants after being cut by the Panthers to come in and fill that our third center and continuing to play well, I think the offensive line coach held a job that he's doing here in Carolina. And I think the scheme overall is, like Dave Canales touched on today, is that they're not asking these guys to do more than what they know they can do, and hopefully setting them up for success that way. And I think, he can take that mentality to other places and use that, not specifically with offensive line, but maybe in other areas of the team. But overall, I think the offensive line continues week in and week out to put together at least, performances you can win games with. And I think week in and week out, they do that for their quarterback. So impressive for us to be talking about an offensive line like that in Carolina after years and years and years of pitiful play. So good job by Dan Morgan drafting, not so much drafting for the offensive line, but free agents. And then, like I said, the staff really coaching these guys up.
That part right there about, and the chat is talking a lot about Dan Morgan right now. So we'll get into that too, because that's a great thing to bring up, and I think that's a really organic conversation to talk all about all of these moves that he's had his fingerprints on so far. But your point about the free agent additions to the offensive line, I believe it was on one of the first episodes we had done together that I spoke about how much that interior offensive line, having 2 really good players, would help not only Austin Corbett by being insulated by really good players that can handle that zone scheme that they're running, that can move, that have strength, that fit exactly what Canales' MO was, but also how it was really going to benefit Ike Mekwonu on that left side, because he's not always out on an island. He's not always on his own, and he can focus on his technique without worrying about being in the wrong assignment because of the guy next to him also having no clue what he's doing. I think we see that benefit when you see these moving pieces being interjected in and out of the lineup, right? Last year, man, if we had an offensive lineman get injured, it was essentially the Grim Reaper coming and knocking on our door for that week. You knew it was a wrap. Bryce was probably going to get touched 8 times in that game. It just was what it was, right? Right now, if it's not Damian Lewis and it's not Robert Hunt, if they're in there, I feel relatively confident about having to have a holdover play a game or two. And Brady Christensen is more than a holdover. I don't want to limit him to that and relegate his abilities to that. He's not. Brady Christensen is maybe I'm trying to like go through my head while Bryson was talking there. I don't know of a utility offensive lineman in the league right now that's as valuable and solid at all of the positions that he's been asked to play as Brady Christensen. He's kind of like that, not elite necessarily at anything, but really good at a lot of things. That's a perfect depth player. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't be a starter, right? I think that he's good enough to be a starting center somewhere. I think a team could be interested in that. I think he could play left guard. I don't think that's his best place, and that's what's funny about it. When he was left guard, he was one of our better offensive linemen before he got hurt, right? And all of a sudden, he's playing these other positions, and I think he's better at them. Like, I really do, man. As far as playing left tackle, you lose some physicality, and that's a true statement about the way that he plays that position. He is nimble, he's reactionary, and he's really good at getting into especially his jump sets, getting his feet where they're supposed to be. I think that he's really talented in that regard. I do think that for what Icky brings and the progress, look, man, you got to give Icky a little credit here. Icky has not been a bum for these Carolina Panthers. He hasn't necessarily been a no questions asked, that's your future left tackle. But for a team, man, that didn't think he even should be on the roster for a little bit there last season, and in a portion of, even his rookie season, he had some really serious struggles. There's some development happening here. And you bring up the offensive line coach. I love that you do that because those guys rarely get talked about. Deserves a ton of credit, as does Dave Canales, man. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I am usually very supportive of Dave Canales. I have a lot of question marks. But when something goes well, you should give credit to everyone that's had a piece of that. And his offensive scheme has a whole lot to do with it. And building that coaching staff has a lot to do with that as well. So that unit, man, very, very pleased with how they adapt.
Yeah, I think it's also very beneficial, and it came at the expense of the past couple of years and the teams that were part of them, is these guys got valuable starter reps. I mean, they were thrown into the trenches on all across the line, whether it was Zavala or Christensen. And now when they're put into that backup role, when they're just filling in when a guy gets hurt, they already have that experience under the belt. And it came at the cost of those other teams. And, that sucked. But now you're kind of seeing that, these guys, they're plug and play, basically. And there's not much drop off there, which it's been great, because I feel like last year, and Bryson, you can vouch for this, I feel like every week we were bitching about the offensive line. That's the one position group we don't bitch about every week. We don't talk about them much. If we're not talking about them much, that means they're probably doing a damn good job. So, and we do try to shout them out, but I don't think they get enough credit. Like, this was bottom of the barrel offensive line last year. For God's sakes, we still had the guy who does the Diana Rossini show still thinking the Panthers offensive line was bad this year. Chase Daniels.
Chase Daniel. Yeah.
So, like, this offensive line deserves a lot of credit. The offensive line coach deserves a lot of credit. I remember when a lot of people, they loved the previous coach. His name's escaping me right now, who was, touted as one of the top in the league.
James Campen.
But kudos to this staff so far, this offensive line staff, because those guys are playing really well, and Dan Morgan deserves credit. I think we're all hard on him, and deservedly so, just based off of the the shittiness we've had to deal with front offices lately. But between the rookies he's brought in, they're all making an impact. I don't think you could say that in past decade or so with this team. Like the second, third, and fourth round picks making an impact. And we haven't even seen Jonathan Brooks on the field yet. Like, we haven't seen the second round pick. Supposed to be the best back in the draft this year. and we still have not seen him play yet. So, like, I mean, if these guys continue on the path they're on right now, and we might have hit gold on those first 4 picks of the draft, which is insane. And then the undrafted free agent, hopefully, that they lock up very soon. I don't know how that's going to work, but he has really shown out this year in Jalen Coker. So Dan deserves a lot of credit for these rookies because they're playing well right now, and I'm excited about the young guys on this team. And I don't think we could have said that last year, excuse me, and then really like the past 7 years. So it's been great. I that's the one thing that's been so positive this year, I would say. But let's move to the defense a little bit. I know we kind of touched on them. I know Ricky talked a little bit about them, but J.C. Horn is having a hell of a year. Hands down his best year. Obviously, his availability is helping with that, but is proving what a lot of us thought early in the draft with him, that he's a lockdown corner. Mike Jackson had a hell of a game this week. What were your guys' thoughts with this defense? I know, Bryson, before we get into this, and there's a reason why Dennis Allen was fired this week, and we'll talk about it a little bit because I had a graphic made. You probably saw it on Twitter already. But what played into his firing, and I know it's not just this game, but there was some questionable calls. I remember me and Bryson talking that 4th and 1. I think it was late in the game. They were at about midfield. I think they trotted out Derek Carr, and then they ended up not even snapping it. They got the delay of game and punted. One of the dumbest decisions ever. The Saints were running with ease on this defense, and that might have that could have ruined the Panthers' chances if they would have went for it on that play. So just like boneheaded decisions by him. There was a couple times too when they were driving, they got to the red zone, started throwing again, and then the drive stalled. And I'm like, dude, you guys, between Taysom Hill and Kamara, I mean, Panthers were not stopping those two dudes. Taysom Hill, we all know when that guy plays the Panthers, he's the MVP of the game. That's just how it is. That's what it's how it works. So I don't know what the hell Dennis Allen was doing in that game with some of the decisions he was making. But what did you guys make of this defense in this game that, had some stops?
Yeah. Real quick, before I talk about that, shout out to, we were saying offensive line coach in Carolina. I want to say his name, Joe Gilbert. First of all, shout out to Joe Gilbert for his work he did on the offensive line, with the offensive line, and continuing to do. But as far as the defense goes, to defend Dennis Allen a little bit, I don't think he's the one calling plays in New Orleans. I believe that's Kubiak, but still, he has the final say, I would imagine, on plays if he doesn't like it. But he's had his fair share of mistakes in New Orleans. I believe he is like 3rd all-time most losses as a head coach in NFL history. So the Saints have been very patient with Dennis Allen, and if I were them, I would have extended him because I still think he's got some good years under his belt for New Orleans. But yeah, the defense played really well, man. At least in the pass game, I would say. Mike Jackson, of course, the pass breakup to win the game. Derek Carr wasn't even looking J.C. Horn's way all game for good reason. I think, like Curtis touched on, J.C. Horn is balling and a scary person to throw towards. So the run defense was not good, and I don't think anyone's surprised about that. I feel like anytime Kamara or Taysom Hill, Curtis's favorite player in the NFL, touched the ball, they went for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yards a carry, which was frustrating. But again, the Saints offense continued to go away from the run. Like in Carolina, what we preach every week, run the ball. The Saints would build momentum running the ball and then get into the red zone, pass the ball, and kick a field goal or punt, whatever the case was. So the defense, though, I think they did enough. obviously, to keep the offense within striking distance, and the offense answered the bell. So I was excited that the defense didn't, give up a 50 burger like they did in week 1 versus Derek Carr. But the Saints, they lost Olave on that hit from Xavier Woods. They didn't have Shaheed, and I think they were throwing to like Bub Means and Mason Tipton. So a bunch of guys I've never heard of. And the one play that frustrated me the most for the defense was the Xavier Woods, Troutman. I believe that's the tight end, Troutman, where he got mossed. I mean, Troutman is no prolific pass catching tight end in the NFL, and Xavier Woods, I feel like, continues to struggle back there at that safety position this year in particular. So his counterpart playing really well, Damani Richardson, undrafted rookie, another one that I think has shown really good progress week in and week out. The starts that he's had, I think he is a solid piece moving forward for this defense. And they're getting some guys back this week versus the Giants. So maybe that defense continues to take steps forward to being maybe not the worst defense in NFL history. We'll see if that happens. But I think, they've at least put some good to decent film out versus the Saints, and we'll see if they can continue to carry that over versus the Giants.
Before Ricky goes, I do want to shout out Damani Richardson. I think he had the most tackles, like 13 last week. He's still there's areas where he needs to improve. There's no doubt about it. He's a rookie, but he gets me excited. He does, because there's plays to be had there, and he's shown some flashes where if he can put it all together, I think he could be a pretty good player in this league. And I love the dude ever since training camp. Those picks he had in joint practices with the Jets. I think he had one in a preseason game. I wanted the dude to make the roster. He was on my 53 to start the year. Obviously, they thought they had a pretty deep safety class. I don't know who had this on Twitter this week, but they're like, yeah, Carolina came in the year with like one of the best, or a pretty good tandem. And they just forgot, it wasn't Nick Scott. It was Damani Richardson the whole time. So he has played really well. Just wanted to shout him out. But Ricky, go ahead.
No, that's a great point though with Damani. One thing with Damani that stands out to me when you watch him, Canales says that he wants guys that play fast, right? Damani Richardson plays fast. He's an instinctual player. He doesn't do a lot of second guessing, so he's not usually behind or out of position. Now, his aggressiveness is kind of a double-edged sword sometimes, but I would much rather have a guy that you have to kind of rein in every now and then than have a guy who's hesitant to get active. And one thing about Damani is he's not hesitant. That dude is.
He reminds me of Jameson.
Deshaun Jameson. Yeah. 100%. And the good thing about Damani Richardson, and where Jameson, again, this is not a pun necessarily intentionally, but where Jameson fell short was on the physical side of things. I mean, he was 5'8", 5'9", not long arms. Damani Richardson is not that. Damani Richardson also is probably as stout of a run defender as almost any of our second level guys. Trevin Wallace is very clearly a physical player, and this is no slight to Bryson's favorite Panther, Josie Jewell, but Josie just isn't brute strength driven. Like he's just not. He's really smart, man, and he reads plays well, and he gets to where he's supposed to be. But a lot of times he does get run through on his tackles. You don't see a whole lot of that with Damani Richardson. Damani Richardson is a stout run defender, and I love it, man. But he does have enough natural ability on the back end of things to keep things interesting. You know what I mean?
I like that. Keep things interesting. That's a good way to put it. It really is.
I mean, but you got to have some of that, though, right? Because, like, what do we have on this defense that is risky and in a beneficial way? Mm-hmm. Like, J.C. Horn is a terrific football player. But the way that we use him and what we've asked now, we used him a little different in this game, and we used Mike Jackson a little bit different in this game. A little bit more press. went on here this week, and it worked. I think that a lot of that has to do with, and now I'm kind of going off what I was saying, but I think a lot of that has to do with the guy that I'm glad I actually just somehow in my stupid head, I just got back to the point that I wanted to get to originally, and that's Dane Jackson. I like what they're doing with Dane Jackson. I tweeted out some stats about his usage of his 4 years at Buffalo. He wasn't in the slot often at all. He wasn't playing in the box often at all. You're talking about out of almost probably like 1,600-ish snaps, he was in the box for 118 of them in 4 years. He was in the slot for 30 of them in 4 years at Buffalo. He's been in the slot in 22 or 20 in the last 2 weeks, 18 reps in the box. And they're using him almost not as like a big star. That's not necessarily what they're doing. But in Evero's defense, they do need that kind of player. And I think that a lot of us thought maybe that would even be Jamie Robinson. Jamie just hasn't gotten on the field. But Dane Jackson, man, he looked like that's where he naturally plays. And what a huge advantage that would be, because Mike Jackson cannot play inside. I'm going to tell you right now, Mike Jackson, the way that he doesn't like press, I'm going to tell you that ain't good for him wanting to play inside on the slot, because that's a whole lot of read and react and movement and mirroring. And Dane Jackson was physical, decisive, fluid moving out there. I think that he could be a real upgrade for this defense with his versatility. These little utility knife players that Evero and this offense even now seems like they're starting to kind of like fall in love with, right? We talked about Brady Christensen being able to do everything and feeling good about that. I think that might be the identity for this defense, is get guys going at what they're good at, man. Stop trying to force the personnel to the scheme, do the scheme to the personnel. And I think that I saw a little bit of that this week. That's what I've always asked. Don't be so stubborn about the things you don't have to be stubborn about. And I think we have seen some adjustments the last few weeks, man. And I'm pretty excited about that. The run defense, though, Bryson brought it up. They reverted back to the means, though, right? Because what they did against Denver was probably their best run showing all year from a defensive standpoint. And that was against a team that wanted to run the ball, made that known. The Saints came down, and that was the one thing that they marched was the football in the run game. That was the only thing that I thought they did well. The only other thing I'll say about our defense, beginning of the game, I thought that Derek Carr was our best defender, because on third downs, he made probably 3 or 4 different throws that came up short to his receivers that were open throws that either A, would have extended drives, or B, would have resulted in a touchdown if he had actually put a little bit of drive on the throws. Alex is way deep into that Jim Beam. Like in a matter of 40 minutes, we went from, hey guys, don't worry, I'm not drunk tonight, to him tipping for my tattoos. Like, I appreciate it though. I mean, hey, I'll drink to it.
Yeah,
I feel
to Ricky's tattoos.
Guys, I feel a little bit like slutty doing this.
Oh.
Don't forget, folks, if you're joining us, we do have a super chat now. You can find it on YouTube. It's that little money sign. Again, we do appreciate the support. It'll go to just bettering our content, not only for you guys, but also some of the equipment to make our quality good as a podcast. So we do appreciate it. And Alex, of course, thank you so much for admiring Ricky's tattoos. All right, I don't even know where we were talking. Oh, we were on defense here. I wanted to touch on Trevin Wallace for a second here and get your guys' take on him. Again, Bryce and I were at the game. You can only catch so much when you're in the stadium. But I still think, even with Josie Jewell back, Trevin Wallace is in over his head still. I don't know if you guys get that sense, but there was a pass, I think, to a tight end that I thought was supposed to be his guy that he gave up. I want to say it was middle of the game. But there's points in the game where I feel like he's supposed to be in a gap and there goes an open run. Kamara had a lot of cutbacks this week that were wide open. He could drive a damn ship through the hole. I mean, it seemed like that bad in the run game. But next year, will it be beneficial that Trevin Wallace got these reps? Probably. But I feel like it would have been more beneficial if he would have actually gotten to sit behind Shaq Thompson. Obviously, it couldn't happen with the injury, but I'm just curious what you guys think of Trevin and his play this past week.
Yeah, let's touch on the super chat real quick, Making True Money.
Yeah.
If you guys would bring that up.
And shout out Making True Money, man. Look at that. Don't do many on other chats, but here you go, guys. Shout out Making True Money, dude. First one in, first of all. He was up there at the top of this chat and talk about let's go. He was here first, ready to do it. Yes, I will absolutely drink to that, bro.
Yeah. Cheers to Making True Money. We appreciate it.
And hold on. Can we double tap here? Because look at Pineda Tempest. Another one. Coke Boys, we up. I'll do it, man.
That's so true.
Jalen's mom might not like it, but you know what? Jalen did have a problem with the Coke Boys.
Ricky, I won't say you got a lot in there, but Bryson, if you're down on your beer, finish your drink here if you could for both of these guys. We appreciate it, gentlemen.
I am not down on my beer.
I would love to chug the rest of mine, but that's about 2.5 beers left in this gigantic joke of a glass.
All right, where were we? Yeah, Coke Boys. Let's talk about that for a minute. Hold on here. We'll get back to Trevin Wallace. What do you guys think of the nickname with Jalen Coker? I want to say there was a meme out there. I don't know who made it, but I feel like we need to jump on this opportunity. The Scarface Jalen Coker. I don't know if you guys saw that picture on Twitter, but it was incredible. The famous "say hello to my little friend" scene, I love that shit. I thought that was great. But where are you guys on this nickname? I think Cokehead is. I think that has stuck. But what do you guys think of the nickname and what would you like?
Coke Boys, I don't mind it. I think it's funny. Obviously, I can see where his mother's coming from. And not wanting to or not liking that name, but Coker thinks it's funny. He said himself, and I think there's no harm meant by that. I think it's just like a kind of quirky, funny nickname that fans have created, and for a guy to come in and have the support of the fan base that he does already as an undrafted free agent, I think he's just buying into it and loving it, man. Because I'm sure at Holy Cross, it wasn't the same level of fandom support he's getting with the Carolina Panthers. So I don't mind it at all. I mean, like I said, I can see where his mom's coming from as a parent. I'm not a parent, but as I'm putting myself in someone's shoes as a parent. But I think no harm, no foul there with that nickname. We're not trying to hurt anybody or do anything crazy like that. It's just funny.
First, can I just say, Carter asks, is there a donut in this Stein? I love how many people have, whether it's on Twitter or in YouTube chats and stuff. I absolutely love the way that this donut thing has kind of evolved into a whole thing for this Panthers on Tap community. Also, Alex, put the fucking drink down. You said fried Coker. Get out of here. Don't do that again. Don't you dare do that again. Panther Bo, shout out Panther Bo here, because he's just such a clean cut gentleman. Coke never harmed anyone. It's just good, clean fun. I don't know if he's just being facetious and saying cocaine never harmed anybody. As a Maryland fan, I can tell you Len Bias would disagree. But if you're talking about Coke soda pop, yes, great job, Panther Bo. I agree wholeheartedly. As far as the nickname, right? As far as the nickname, I have seen the one that was the Cocaine Cowboys, that was the combination of Coker and Xavier Legette. That one I'm so in on, I can't get out of it. You know what I mean? It's like trying to squeeze my big ass in a leotard. Once I'm in it, dude, I'm in there for life. And I am absolutely thrilled by the name Cocaine Cowboys. I think that's terrific. I don't know how you come up with a good name that's kind of centered around Coke. Pickle doesn't have a bad one there. Have a Coker and a smile. That's just a hard one to say. You know what I mean? If he has a touchdown, you're not going to be like, Jalen, have a Coker and a smile, Coker. You got to find something that rolls off your tongue. But I do appreciate that effort there from Pickle, because that is the family-friendly version that I'm sure his mother would absolutely support. Well, I think we can workshop it a little bit. I think we've got enough. We've got more German beer for Sunday. So in the next 4 days, I think let's make that our task, is to come up with something hard and firm for each of us to bring to the table next episode.
I'm all for that. Let's get back. Let's go back to the Trevin the Trevin Wallace. I don't even know where we left this. I don't know who was even talking about it. So I apologize.
I don't have anything to add on Trevin Wallace. I'll let Ricky talk. I haven't really been paying much attention to him and his position. We were at the game this past weekend. I wasn't watching him, so I didn't see the play that you were talking about, Curtis. But I'll let Ricky speak on Trevin.
Yeah, the play. And Curtis, were you talking, and forgive me because we're far enough removed from that segment of us having that conversation. You're talking about the play where Josie literally had to push Trevin into his run fit over towards the gap. Is that the one you talked about?
But there was another play, and it was to a tight end, and I thought it was his guy, and the guy was wide open, and I think it was like a third down play, and like after the fact, I'm like, dude, like come on, like you gotta get into coverage. 100%. And then there was, it's just I don't know, he seems like he's in over his head right now.
We have to keep in mind, and this is something that I said, Trevin Wallace is a physical specimen. He's a terrific athlete, but he didn't really show a lot in coverage in college until he went to the Senior Bowl, and they asked him to do more at the Senior Bowl. I'm not trying to say that that's not a good place to gauge talent and evaluate talent. The Senior Bowl is one of the best places to evaluate talent, to be completely honest. They put on one of the absolute best demonstrations, whether it's from the practice reps, the training reps, the one-on-ones, the scrimmages, and then the actual game itself. That is a terrific way to do it. But he's asked to do it in isolated incidents that aren't in a game. When there's moving pieces and you have other responsibilities and assignments that you're in the middle of, right, as a group on defense, it is a little bit different. And one thing with Trevin that is on his college tape was his proclivity to be a little bit late in diagnosing plays. He bites hard on run fakes. That's the first thing that you'll notice about Trevin. Is that he clamps down, he bears down quick, man, and hard, which is great if it's an actual run play. If it's not, that's where he has to rely on his superior athleticism to try and get back in place. But that's really difficult to do against NFL players. In college, you might have had a better success rate in being able to do that. In the NFL, everyone is extremely good at what they do, right? And the offense already has the advantage knowing where they're going in that route and in that concept. The defense is kind of at the mercy of making the right read. So him not being terrific at that, Bryson said it. In a perfect world, man, Shaq Thompson is healthy, and it's Shaq Thompson and Josie Jewell, and Trevin is sitting behind and he's watching this. Because I think he is the kind of player that could benefit greatly from the mental reps as opposed to being thrust in there and sink or swim style learning. I don't think this is hurting him, though. And I do think that having Josie Jewell, there's no detriment, right? Like, there's no way that this is doing anything negative to him as a developmental player. Josie Jewell being in there and being the communicator, having that green dot, that did make a difference. It did allow Trevin to play without that responsibility, without that weight, and it showed up a couple times. But I think that it's going to take a period of time where he's not in that role, let him get comfortable with what his new role is. Because, again, dude, you're talking about a third-round rookie that is now in his second role that he didn't even anticipate playing in his rookie season. So there is a learning curve. I'm going to have a little bit of grace with him. But, yeah, there are signs there of exactly what you saw in college still showing up in the NFL.
So there's one more thing I want to talk about, and then we're going to get to a break here, and then we'll come back. We still got a ton. We got Mingo trade to talk about. Well, actually, we got to discuss a couple of things here with this Saints game. So stand by because shit keeps popping in my head as I'm talking here. But I want to ask you guys about Dave Canales and just one. I don't know if this is being nitpicky, what it is, but what is your thoughts on his decisions as a head coach overall when it comes to in-game situations? And it's I don't know if you want to call it minimal, but I feel like he's really bad with timeouts. Okay. And the one that comes to mind was they score the touchdown to go up at the end of the game. There was a delay of game penalty. A experienced head coach calls a timeout before the flag gets thrown. I mean, you've seen the Sean McVays of the world, the Mike McDaniels sprinting down the sideline to get to that ref to call the timeout. You don't see that out of Canales. And I know it's his first year, but like those when you're playing a good team, and this is looking future, when this team is actually good again, when you're playing a good team, you need to have that under your belt, because that is a make or break play, because solid teams are going to go march down the field and kick a field goal and beat you. So I've seen that from him, where he doesn't call a timeout, they get a delay of game or whatever the case is. I'm curious where you guys are at with that. Am I overreacting a little bit here? I don't know. Those things I've seen time and time again, and I think they pile up on you over time. And when it actually does matter, it's going to bite you in the ass. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you can even see it from the week prior when Bryce got those back-to-back delay games and the coach didn't call any timeouts. I think he's still learning to balance being a head coach with calling plays, with managing timeouts. And another area he struggled is throwing the challenge flag. Like, has he thrown the challenge? I can't remember if he's thrown it once this year. So I think he's still learning on the job, which, is not totally like against the rules as a first year head coach in the league. And he was a play caller for one season. So he's ascended quickly, and he's got a lot to learn. And I don't hold that against him, because I don't think it's totally uncommon for someone in his position. So definitely a learning curve there for him. Now we can talk about play calling. That's a different issue. He should be a little bit better on that, but unfortunately he's not. So in regards to the timeouts and the challenges, and even like when the defense is out there looking confused or the offense doesn't look totally in position, he loves to keep those timeouts going into halftime in particular. I think they went into halftime with 3 timeouts versus the Saints. So, use them. Just use your timeouts, man. I think that's what they're there for. You don't get any benefit keeping them. They don't stack to the next game. So use your timeouts, and I think eventually he'll get there. Like I said, it's just getting comfortable being in that position and managing everything he has to manage as a head coach on that sideline.
Yeah. Before I give my thought on that, Panther Pickle said he was out of here. Pickle, thank you for tuning in, man. We appreciate that. Dave Canales and the timeouts and just overall assessment, because I'll agree with Bryson that I'm not even going to get into the play calling necessarily right now. That's a different animal, and it's an animal that I don't particularly like, man. It's like a fucking spider or some sort of snake with legs. I don't fucking like it. Either way, Dave Canales is overwhelmed. I'm just going to say it for what it is. It's his first time on the job. And this is my perception. I don't know any of this, but my perception of seeing other people being overwhelmed before in situations, me being overwhelmed before in situations, he is acting like an individual who is overwhelmed. And it's not unusual for a first-time head coach who has only been a play caller and an offensive coordinator one time to be overwhelmed. So I do think that we have to understand that this was always going to be part of it. I know ideally in all of our minds, we wanted him to come in, have Bryce fixed, and I still got beef with that, but we wanted all this stuff to go perfectly, and we wanted to be the team this year that when teams or when fans from other teams across the league are like, man, how did they turn good? Like in just that 1 year, like how did all this shit start to connect and hit? Because we've never been that team, and we see that team every other time. We watch this happen all these other places, man. And last year it was very personal for us because of CJ Stroud doing it with the Texans. This year you're seeing it with Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. There's always that team, and I just wanted to be that team. But here's the realistic take on this, man, and this is as a Dave Canales criticizer. I still believe in him. I still believe in this team. But the reality of this is he needs this full year. As does Bryce Young. Bryce Young needs the full year, and he didn't get that. So that's where my beef is already going to be, right? But Canales, maybe take something off your plate. I don't know if it's a play calling. I don't know. But maybe you have a situational game manager. Maybe Brad Idzik has that control for a little bit. Maybe he calls third downs. Maybe he has the conversation about what are we doing here on fourth. Should we have Johnny Hekker throw this thing again? It's 4th and 1. Maybe we should have Hekker go out there and throw a nice little out route. But then maybe Brad Idzik comes in and says, hey, I got an
No.
idea, man. We have Chuba Hubbard on the roster. We should probably run the football. So maybe that's what you need, man. Maybe you need that devil and that angel on the opposite shoulders that sit there and they talk to each other instead of just the big head in the middle that's doing everything. Shout out. Look at JD, man.
Yeah, we got to shout out. We got to shout out Panthers Den here. Good evening, bros. Canal says too much on his plate as a play calling rookie head coach, except head coaches can't do that efficiently. Brother Ricky is cooking. Ricky's always cooking, whether it's donuts or salmon.
JD is one of my favorite people, man, that I have met through Panthers content stuff. That is an incredibly wise football mind right there. So if he is endorsing or signing off on any of the stuff that any one of us is saying, I will 100% cheers to that. Appreciate the super chat, JD.
Appreciate it, man.
Cheers.
What did we finish what we were just saying there?
Yeah, you capped it off pretty well.
Thank you.
I want to end on this since we might as well wrap up the Saints game here. And that is this. We all know by now that Dennis Allen is no longer the head coach of the Saints. So I made this graphic this week. The minute I saw this, I saw someone tweeting, Bryce Young has had several coaches fired. Does it suck a little bit? Yeah, with obviously Frank Reich gone. But I'll be honest with you guys, like I wish Dennis Allen was still the Saints head coach. I wish Arthur Smith was still in Atlanta. These guys sucked. They were not head coaches. They were coordinators. And Dennis Allen's a pretty good DC. And Arthur Smith is a pretty good OC. But they're not head coaches, and they couldn't manage a team. And I loved every bit of this. I was shocked the Saints kept Dennis Allen another year. And was Bryce Young, he was the reason why they got fired? No, they've been shitty for several games in a row, and that's why they're gone. And it's kind of ironic that Dennis Allen got canned when he was with Derek Carr and then with Oakland, and then he gets canned with Derek Carr in New Orleans. Maybe Ricky can speak on that. I know he's number one in the fan club for Derek Carr.
I've had it up to about
and Arthur's
between you and Alex. I've had it up to here.
I got to take my shots when I can. But I'm just curious, and this goes. I wanted to touch on this too. So it goes with the head coach firing, and also Cam Jordan, who, for me, is one of my probably top 5 most hated players in the NFL. I can't stand the dude. Never liked him. Go back, listen to our podcast from a year or two ago when we played it. I just cannot stand this guy whatsoever. And if you haven't seen it by now, I'll try to pull it up as I'm talking, but he had tweeted out something after the Panthers game over his frustrations of losing to the Panthers. He said, "We just lost to the Panthers. I love y'all, New Orleans. Truly had higher expectations and the best of hopes for us all. Y'all deserve it." Breaking news, you are higher in draft order than us, which means you have a shittier record. So for him to tweet this out is like, newsflash, you suck too, dude. So I just thought it was comical. I love the Panthers players who, J.C. Horn and Lonnie Johnson for coming out and quote tweeting him and kind of taking a shot at the Saints, because Dan Moore, and it's not off of a tweet. I'm not saying these guys are dogs off of a tweet. I think they're dogs on the field too, just their style of play. But for them to come out and stick up for this team, even when, things aren't going the greatest, they just won, their second game of the year, but to kind of show some pushback and not be bullied by other, guys in the NFL, I appreciate it. And it's refreshing to see as a Panthers fan. So, but just kind of twofold, if you guys want to touch on both the Cam Jordan tweet and then obviously the firing of Dennis Allen as the Saints head coach. Ricky, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. What Cam Jordan said. So it's not the same as what Jameis Winston was talking about with Deshaun Watson, where he talked about he put his body on the line every week for the city of Cleveland, right after he got hurt. But for Cam Jordan to like apologize to the city for losing a football game when, as you said, they're just as bad of a football team as we are. Like they're 2-7. They're not a good football team. They've lost 7 in a row, and he's making it seem like it's like that J. Cole song, I Let Nas Down. He made a whole song about how he thought he let his mentor down. I let Nas down. And it's this whining thing the whole time. That's what Cam Jordan just said. He acted like he let Nas down. Dude, you got beat in a football game, Cam Jordan. You've worked us in a lot of football games. You've been playing NFL football for over a decade. Can we not act like this is some sort of like great embarrassment? Now, I will say this. It's a great place of pride for me as a Panthers fan. I love it. When you see people just literally catching flames and going down with the ship, it just brings a tear to my eye, man. You know what I'm saying? Like this is literally, and I don't care how petty or vindictive that makes me. Call me Ricky Petty, Richard Petty. That's my name. I am all for it. I have no problem with us being the ones that ruin other people's seasons if we've already ruined our own. Take a look at my man Bryce Young there. Take a look at my quarterback and that jubilation on his face as he carries that Reaper tool and he gets rid of all these idiots. And someone, I think it was Alex over there, Jim Beam Jr., talking about poor Frank Reich over there in the back. And he's definitely not poor, man. Literally, he got paid handsomely to lose. So I'm very happy for him that Frank Reich is showing the boot. He wasn't doing anything here. I'm cool with it. Dennis Allen, Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith is a talented offensive coordinator for a running quarterback. You know what I mean? He's got a niche, man. He's doing okay with Russell Wilson right now, I guess. But either way, I am totally fine with it. Dennis Allen getting fired. This is probably the nicest thing we've done for the Saints, was encouraging them and finally getting them to press that eject button. Because that dude, I don't know how he came back this year. To be completely honest, I don't understand how he came back and he was retained. I think it's because they knew that they were in a shit situation. And they were just like, well, we might as well just see if he can work it out. We're not going to get anybody else, so let's just let this roll, right? Good riddance. I wish they were all still around because it's probably 1 or 2 wins a season for the Carolina Panthers, as Bryson alluded to earlier.
I love the Richard Petty shout out, by the way. I think that's the king of NASCAR. Before Bryson goes, we gotta, man, you guys are gonna get me drunk in this episode. This is ridiculous. So Cam Jordan, Pinata Tempest, $5. We appreciate it. Cam Jordan should not be talking. LOL, he got a bunch of donuts on his stats this year. Are we talking Ricky Donuts? Are we talking?
It don't matter, baby. Donuts is.
We're not going there. We're not going.
It don't matter.
We need to create a donut shirt with you. Slap the Panthers on Tap logo on. We need to just get someone who's got a T-shirt.
The O of Panthers on Tap is a donut. You know.
Well, let's cheers to Pinata Tempest. We appreciate it.
We'll do it
Cheers,
again.
man.
Cheers, man. Thank you for the super chat.
But Bryson, Dennis Allen, Cam Jordan, where you at with both those guys?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I wish Dennis Allen would have stuck around a little bit longer in New Orleans. Honestly, I think they didn't give him long enough. I think he was just settling in as their head coach, getting the ball in the road with that defense. We saw the first 2 weeks they were playing great football. So to move on from him after, 60, 70 games as a head coach, I feel like it's too early for the Saints. So
Bryson is killing this. I absolutely love this bit, by the way. This is Bryson's best bit so far.
No, I mean, like I've told you guys before, my brother's a Saints fan. He was ecstatic that he was fired. Didn't want him this year, going into this year. So I think a lot of Saints fans were happy about that, and rightfully so. He's not a good coach. A good coordinator probably, but not a good head coach. In regards to Cam Jordan, I honestly did not know he played in this game because I did not see him make any plays in this game. I believe he got 1 tackle, and that was the totality of his stats from this game. So ever since he mailed that bottle of wine to Cam Newton, or whatever the hell he did with that wine, I've not liked this guy.
Guys,
Now,
hold on here. You brought up a good point. I don't mean to cut you off. We need to figure out. We should us three here. I'm talking as the podcast. We should come together and get a bottle of wine and send it to the New Orleans Saints. their team organization or his house. I think it'd be hilarious.
There's a good bottle of red. There's a good bottle of red called Fortunate Son. We could send that over to him since we're clearly their dads right now.
But
Bryson, go ahead.
Yeah, to finish my point real quick, I think the one thing I did like about Cam Jordan was when Cam Newton was getting a lot of flack across the NFL, Cam Jordan came out and defended Cam Newton. And Cam Newton, it's no secret, is my favorite NFL player of all time. My favorite Carolina Panther. Was a big supporter of him in Carolina. Brought the best years of my life to me as a Panthers fan. So I'm forever grateful to him. And for someone to come out and support him and defend him as a player that played against him, I was happy to hear that from Cam Jordan. But still doesn't make me like him as a person. And I was happy to have his stat sheet full of zeros, full of donuts, as Ricky would say. And yeah, I think to tweet something like that when you are last in the division, I think the Carolina Panthers players are in the right to quote tweet you and say, dude, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, what's going on here? Because you're last and we're not, and you lost. So, acting like you lost to a CFL team was not appropriate, I didn't think.
It's like maybe he needs a little bit of, what is the dessert wine, the German dessert wine, Riesling, a little Riesling with that cheese, right? Like if you're going to do all that Riesling whining, little buddy, look at your little German beer cheese for you.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back. We're going to talk. We got a lot to talk about still. We got Jonathon Mingo trade. We have statistically speaking coming up. We'll dive into the Giants game. We also have bets and predictions. Again, a guy who tipped us handsomely tonight, Alex, hit pretty big on one of our parlays he tailed. So stick around for that. We got that coming up. We'll be right back after this short break. Exciting news, Panther fans. I'm thrilled to announce our partnership with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert, opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join sportsbooks in your area to get the best odds and new user offers. Head over to our dedicated page at signupexpert.com/Panthers to explore a selection of sportsbooks tailored to your region, each with unique offerings. If you're ready to take sports betting to the next level and show some love to Panthers on Tap, I highly recommend signing up for your next sportsbook through our Sign Up Expert link. All right, we're back. Appreciate everyone. We're almost hitting 400 listeners right now, so we appreciate every single one of you guys. Ricky, is that a new beer? Is that the same ones you've been?
It's the same one, but I'm gonna refill this giant water jug so that I can continue to hydrate myself.
All right, so let's talk Mingo here because.
Wait, Kurtz, before you go, let's pull up JP's comment. The newest one in the chat. Well, the second newest one. Guys, before you talk about Mingo, can we get a big cheers to his trade? If there was ever an indictment of Scott Figueroa, it was the 2 second-round picks wasted on TMJ and Jonathon Mingo. I'll let you guys cheers to that one because I, to the very end, I was supporting Jonathon Mingo and hoping for the best. I think Ricky will point to my investment that I made on rookie cards for Jonathon Mingo. But I was just hoping for the best for a second-round wide receiver. That, as Matt would put it, we had the new whoever to whoever connection in Carolina. So.
I will say this: I will cheers when JP sends that super chat. No, I just kidding. But hey, I'll cheers anyway.
I will go ahead and cheers too, because you guys talked about 6 is yours, Bryson, 80 is Curtis's, 15 became mine, man. And that's not an indictment on 15. I didn't hate him. He was overdrafted like ridiculously by this front office. Maybe he works out elsewhere, but it just wasn't going to work here. So big time kudos for Dan. And I will drink 2 sips of this new fresh cold beer. One for Bryson and his card, and then one for me.
And shout out to JP. He's across the pond listening to us. It's very early in the morning there, so we do appreciate the support internationally.
Dedication, man. I don't know that I would listen
Our
to me that way.
international game coming up. I know we do have a few listeners in Germany, so if you are, appreciate you guys, and hopefully we're getting you all hyped up for this game this weekend. But let's talk about Mingo for a second here. I want to give a shout out to myself because about 25 minutes before this trade went down, Todd Archer tweeted out that Jerry Jones had said on a radio show that they were looking for some young talent at wide receivers, someone they admired in the draft. And I was like, oh, shit, here we go. So I did some digging, found some stuff, tweeted it out, and literally like 20 minutes later, we had a trade for Jonathon Mingo. So tip of the cap for Panthers on tap for catching that. But no, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the trade. Panthers get a 4th-round pick from Dallas. They give up Mingo. Did they give up anything else? Was a pick swap? I didn't write it down. I'm blanking here for a second. I'm also almost 4 beers deep in like an hour and a half. So
yeah. Carolina tethered to 7th.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So what were your guys' thoughts when this dropped? I know a lot of us were probably thinking maybe Thielen, maybe Miles Sanders, maybe Clowney, and then there goes Mingo. So what'd you think of the Morgan, what Morgan got for him, and what do you think Dallas is getting in Mingo? Whoever wants to start, fire away.
Yeah, I'll take it first with a little somber mood for myself. I think Jalen Coker is making guys like Mingo expendable in that wide receiver room when you have an undrafted free agent come in and play as well as he's playing, one of the best rookie wide receivers in the NFL to this point in the season per PFF. You are able to move on from a guy who has struggled. I mean, even as a supporter, I'm not blind to the struggles he's had on the NFL field to this point in his career. I think to get a 4th-round pick for Jonathon Mingo, more than the Cowboys got for trading away Amari Cooper, was spectacular on Dan Morgan's part. I think, I would have tried to sell more. Are you interested in Miles Sanders? Are you interested in Jadeveon Clowney? Like, hell, you might have came out of there with a 1st-round pick from Jerry Jones if he's trading the 4th for Mingo, man, because Mingo has not been good. He's not. And I held out hope that, he was probably overdrafted, but at Ole Miss, he had some good tape, man. And he has some abilities I feel like can still be developed into a decent wide receiver in the NFL. I'm not sure that's going to happen in Dallas with a backup quarterback playing and a coaching staff I'm not too high on, and Mike McCarthy. But, possibly it does. And if it does, I'd be happy for the guy. But I think for what Carolina got in return in their situation that they're in, adding a 4th-round pick, I think they have 7 picks in the top 150 now. That's a home run, in my opinion, trading Mingo. Because you're not getting that for Adam Thielen. You're not getting a 4th-round pick. We saw what we got for Deontay Johnson. We moved up 15 spots in the NFL draft to move Deontay Johnson, who is a hell of a lot better wide receiver than Jonathon Mingo is. So overall, I think it was a good trade, possibly for both teams if Mingo continues to work and gets better as a wide receiver. But unfortunately, on the field, he has not shown much of anything. And, I can see where Ricky's coming from with the frustrations and his lack of spatial awareness, his lack of effort at times, his lack of being a wide receiver in the NFL. But I think down to the last minute, I was holding out hope. And unfortunately, it didn't work out in Carolina for Mingo.
I do think that it's okay also, though, to point to the fact that Mingo did some things decently his rookie season. And it almost felt like when he did do his job at a adequate or even better than adequate level, everything else around him was still trash. So he never really got to capitalize. I mean, I remember in that very first game, right, against the Falcons, He got behind the defender. He could have had a big welcome to the NFL moment of a 75-yard touchdown if the pass was on point and when the ball was accurate. There was a real possibility for a great opening. But it didn't. So then he had to figure it out and get better. And yeah, coaching had a lot to do with that. Situation had a lot to do with that. But Mingo individually, I just didn't see it translate. And he's similar to TMJ in a way that every training camp that you would get a chance to see him play, you were like, man, he's turning a corner. Like, he's got the physical ability, man. It's there, right? He clearly has traits. He is very much an athletic, strong dude. But the position of wide receiver and what Jalen Coker and Puka Nacua and some of these other guys are proving, knowing how to play the position, timing, 100% effort on every single play. That's my big thing. And you want to know how you can end up on my I don't say your name, I only say your number kind of list? It's not giving effort because you're sabotaging the unit that you're playing on. And I think that Mingo almost seemed mentally checked out, to be completely honest, at times. And that frustrates me more than anything that you could do physically. Dropping passes is one thing. I don't love people that throw their ass out of bounds instead of trying to make a play on a pass. I think that that's a little bit silly. I feel like that's probably frowned upon in football, is to try to put your, butt cheeks up neck level of your coaching staff. I think that you should try to keep them a little lower, man. But I don't know. I'm not a wide receivers coach, so I don't know the technical aspects of what their coaching points were there. Can Dallas get a good player? Sure. I don't know what they would have to package with Jonathon Mingo to go and get that good player, but yeah, it's possible, I guess. I also think that it's entirely possible that Jerry Jones had opened up the bottle of Blanton's and was sitting there watching Yellowstone and got feeling a little bit frisky, and he thought that Johnny Mingo was actually a nickname for Jatavian Sanders, and he was like, oh, hell yeah, I got Johnny Mingo over here for a fourth, let's do it. And he just sent it, right? Maybe there's other factors in play here. I am flabbergasted that he sat there and said, I want to give you a fourth round to help you absolve yourself of your sins over there in Carolina. I will say that people try to say that he tried to capitalize, or what Dan Morgan did was capitalize on the fact that he's 1 year removed from a second round draft pick, right? So he's saying there's potential. That second round draft status is a lie. And I'm not trying to be mean, man. He wasn't a second round player. We were the only team, I think, that probably was willing to take him in the second round. I would be shocked to hear that there was other teams that were like chomping at the bit to take him in the second.
Dallas.
Late third, maybe Dallas, but do you think that Dallas would have took him in the second? I don't know, man. That's the kind of stuff we'll never know. But it just felt like the third was the earliest because he was a fourth, fifth, sixth round projected player.
I mean, Jerry did say it was a team. He literally said in that radio, it was a guy who they loved in the draft. So maybe it was.
Yeah, maybe. You know what I also thought too, though, while Bryson was waxing so eloquently about how Jalen Coker came in here and wrecked it for his Golden Goose. What about a nickname that's not just Coke related? What if Jalen Coker's just the boogeyman? I mean, he's walked down a couple of NFL players that got him up out of town pretty quick here as an undrafted free agent at a Holy Cross. So maybe he's just the boogeyman. That if you're around him, man, like you better be on your P's and Q's because this dude will get you out of the paint pretty quickly if you're not on your game.
One thing I want to say about Mingo, I think me and Bryson we defended Mingo this offseason of let's see what he's got in his second year, because if you're going to give Bryce Young some grace, I think he deserves grace too within this offense last year. And he shined in training camp. He was the training camp merchant. I mean, we all heard in the offseason he worked out with Steve Smith and made improvements. And then the lights came on, and the lights meaning he actually played in preseason, had a couple drops, and we're like, oh, maybe, he's just getting used to the offense, whatever the excuse was. And then the season came along and he was having drops and fumbles, and he couldn't put it together on Sundays. And I always thought and I think Ricky disagreed with me on this. I just think he's timid. I think that's the best way to describe him. and his time in Carolina. And it's not, and I don't say timid as does he take a shot here and there. I just think he almost seems lackadaisical in his approach to the position. And that's where I get the timidness from. And that's kind of where I'm going with it. So it didn't work out here. I'm glad Dan Morgan saw that, because if this was the previous regime, we would have sat on him like we did TMJ, and that you wouldn't have gotten anything for him. He would have went to a practice squad like the 49ers. They cut him a few weeks later. But I just want to go through the guys the Panthers missed on. I don't want to harp too much on this, but it's pretty damn pathetic.
You got a super chat there too, Curtis.
Yes, we'll get to that. We'll talk about it here in just a second. But Jaden Reed was 8 picks later. Rashee Rice was 16 picks later. Then you had Marvin Mims, a couple other guys, Nathaniel Dell.
That's Tank Dell.
Nathaniel Dell. Tank Dell. I don't know why they wrote this out as Nathaniel Dell. Tank Dell in the 3rd round. Jalen Hylett, Josh Downs, Dontavian Wicks taken in the 5th, Puka Nacua. I mean, you can go on and on and on about this draft. Carolina could have drafted any one of those guys, but they chose Jonathon Mingo. And it just goes back to this organization last year. And I don't mean to harp on this because I know Steve Smith spoke highly of Jalen Coker. I get it. But he also spoke very highly of Jonathon Mingo. And he was not worth that pick when they took him in the 2nd round at pick 8. And Ricky talked about it. The catch where I shared it to my buddies this once he was traded to Dallas, all my friends back home in Wisconsin. And I said, and the play that Ricky talked about where he tried to reach back for it as he's like falling out. If he just sat down on the route, I mean, he would have had it in a 1st down and way more yards. And I sent to my buddies and I said, this is the play that will define his career in Carolina. And I can never get that video out of my head to this day. But I'll quit rambling. We got Pinata Tempest. We appreciate it. Coker, the Carolina Reaper. I do like that.
Yeah, I do like
that. So cheers to that. Yeah. Bryson, get your glass. Quit slacking over there.
Cheers.
We appreciate you, Pinata.
And just to finish this up, I think that what you say, though, is really important to not put all the blame on Johnny Mingo. Johnny Mingo was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. He didn't ask to come here. He didn't tell them to draft him in the 2nd. He's a young dude that got drafted in the 2nd round of the NFL, and he was just trying to live out his dream. He still has an opportunity, so I don't want to completely shit on him. He's a young dude. He did have good plays. You remember the game against Houston? He had the really nice move where he lost the guy middle of the field, caught the ball, had some really good yak after that. He's got talent, man. We just got to see what he does with it. But we don't. let me rephrase that, Curtis. We don't have to see what he does with it anymore. The Dallas Cowboys have to see what he does with it now.
And I just want to harp on Dallas for a minute because this week, and I get this, the Panther show, but I got to talk about this because it's driving me nuts. This week, they put their quarterback on IR and then go out and go out and trade for a wide receiver and give up draft capital.
I love it.
I mean, it's mind-blowing to me. I'm glad Dan Morgan took advantage of the situation because we don't win many trades as a fan of this organization. But what the hell are you doing, Jerry?
And this is a sure win. And this is a real win. Like, even if Jonathon Mingo turns out to be a really serviceable or good receiver in Dallas, it just wasn't feasible here.
Exactly.
And getting that fourth round pick after having just had to pay the Ravens to take Deontay Johnson, and you can talk about the contract and all of those other things. I get the differences in these two players, but we're talking about trading a player that's never been good at playing NFL football. And you got a 4th round pick. Like that's just, you got to just sometimes keep it really black and white instead of always trying to talk about the differences in situation. If a player's not good and you get that kind of return, it's a very, very big win for the new GM who's trying to look, man, he had heat on him from that Deontay Johnson trade. Even the media, right? Even our local media was talking about how that was a bad trade. It was bad business. You had all kinds of people saying that was a loss. To pay that contract and give up a pick just for essentially an early 6, bad business. And two things could be true. That could be an awful trade, and this could be a terrific trade. I hate this thing of like we have to absolve him of the Deontay thing because Deontay wanted out and all those other things. Totally get it, man. But you guys could have figured something else out. First of all, don't be so loose-lipped. You lost leverage by the entire league knowing that he wanted out. Like that was the biggest non-secret in the NFL, was that Deontay Johnson was unhappy. How did everyone else know about that? Like, was it Deontay Johnson's agency? Maybe. But at some point when you start getting that feeling, and you probably got it in week 2, that was the report, make a move then. Try to get a fourth.
And I think this goes back to the head coach, with, rookie mistakes with the timeouts is I don't think Dave Canales does enough good job of selling it. And what I mean by that is when he was asked, where are you guys at with Deontay Johnson? Well, that's a Dan Morgan and, question. And instead he could have been like, we really like him. Like he's and I guess early on he did say he was going to be a focal point of this offense. Well, once the question started swirling, like, is he available for trade? It was like, yeah, that's a question for Dan and Brand. Instead, he could be like, no, this guy's a focal point of offense. He's our number 1 wide receiver. And that might have sold him a little bit better to teams than, what. Hold on here.
Is it but like, is it selective? Is it, yeah, I see, Alex. Is it selective gamesmanship though? And we'll get to this SOB in a second, but isn't that like selective gamesmanship though? When you sit here and you talk about we're not naming Bryce Young the starting quarterback, and they ask, is that a little gamesmanship? Like, yeah. If you're telling me that you had to be honest or you couldn't do a lie to preserve trade value for Deontay Johnson, but you have to be gamesmanship for your potential franchise quarterback that you came to coach, like that's the issue, man. It's the messaging. But you know what? I'm not trying to damper the mood there, because that was a win for us. And I know Bryson just restocked his quota over there. I've got a giant thing full of beer. I think that this has been a smashing success so far in this episode. Like an emphasis on smashed, because I'm pretty sure that when I look at the 3 of us on this camera.
Alex, we appreciate it. You talking shit to Ricky. I love it. Let's cheers.
Always. Yeah.
You guys argue like brothers.
Hold on, let me get my tattoo in the screen while I drink so you can really enjoy it.
Let's talk. Well, I want to touch on a couple more things with the trade, and then we're going to talk about Bryce Young for a second, and then we'll get to the game this weekend. I want you guys to pick one player on this team. You don't have to go long on this, but who you wish, just one, don't go into many, just one, so we all can have at least, we can all pick at least one, who you would have preferred to see gone at the trade deadline. That obviously is still on the team. Bryson, I'll start with you.
I wonder who that could be. Maybe a running back that has continually not proven his worth. Miles Sanders for sure. I imagine it was pretty hard to sell him to other teams. 1, because of his play on the field, and 2, because of his contract. Again, I think you've touched on it before, Curtis, like the first running back signed in free agency when he was a free agent to a pretty hefty contract for a running back, and has done zilch in Carolina to help his team win. So I would have loved to see him gone, especially with Jonathan Brooks coming back now. Would have been a perfect timing situation thing. But unfortunately, he's still here. And we'll see what happens in regards to playing time on the field.
Ricky?
I don't know. I'm okay with everyone being on the roster. I'm okay with everyone. And that Miles Sanders can stay on the roster. He doesn't have to stay on the football field. And so I would say at this juncture, right? And yeah, if I had to pick a player to leave, it's Miles Sanders. But I also think there's no harm in having depth at the position because God forbid, right? Chuba gets injured and you're looking at Jonathan Brooks, who's coming off an ACL. And then what? Raheem Blackshear? Like Miles Sanders could step into a situation and be okay, right? Like I don't know, man. I'm trying not to completely like just dog this dude out because he still plays for the football team that I love. And so it's really difficult for me to totally hate a player.
But you'll dog Mingo. Okay.
But I didn't know. I even said that Mingo, it was very situational and that he's a young dude. I just got tired of seeing him do stupid shit and not give effort. I don't think that Miles Sanders doesn't give effort. You know what I mean? Like that's where the point that I would say is a little bit different with them.
Well, he doesn't do anything good.
I don't know, man. He's had a couple decent plays. He's had flashes. The problem is we paid him a contract of a guy who's supposed to be the bell cow.
Yeah, point me to good plays because I don't see him.
I could show you a couple good plays. Now, look, if we don't make me Richard Petty again, I got that in my arsenal. I'll do it. But no. Look, I'm not trying to romanticize what Miles Sanders is. I promise you, I'm not. He signed a bell cow contract. He signed a running back 1 contract here, and he has never, ever, ever lived up to running back 2 here in Carolina. So yeah, leaving, get out of here, be fine. But I want to see the coach now take this roster. This is the roster. This is it. I want to see the coaching staff work with it and figure out how to make this a better team at week 18 than it is at week 10.
I'm going to take a shot at Bryson here because I find it funny. He was a guy who wanted Miles Sanders here. If you go back when we talked a couple years ago when he signed with this team, and he was the one who mentioned Miles Sanders today. This is a guy I did not want in the Carolina Panthers. I did not think he was a 3-down back. I wanted them to keep Foreman at the time when they had him. And he has proven to be a complete failure another complete failure of the Scott Fitterer front office. And it is laughable, the contract they gave, and it honestly fucked them in the end because I'm sure, tried to offload this guy. I thought the Bears were probably the only destination because they got Khalil Herbert in the end. And once that happened on the trade deadline day, I was not very optimistic at all at that point.
Bengals got Khalil Herbert.
Oh, was it the Bengals?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at his draft profile. The Bears traded him to the Bengals. But that was all hope was lost at that point with Mingo. And I thought maybe Dallas might dabble there. I know Dowdle had a pretty good game, I think, last week. So they might see some value there in him. We all know that it was rumored that Dallas wanted Jonathan Brooks, and that's why Carolina traded up, and maybe the Giants wanted him as well, which would be very ironic if Brooks played against the Giants this weekend. Oh, full circle moment. But, yeah, I think for me it would have been Miles Sanders. But I'm kind of shocked Adam Thielen didn't go, to be totally honest with you. I thought, maybe he's just not ready to come back from injury. It sounds like he might not be ready to go this week. I think he might have been ruled out already today by Canales. But I thought he was one that would have been dealt, whether it would have been the Chiefs. I know they got Hopkins, Pittsburgh, Dallas. Obviously, they went younger with Mingo, but I thought Dallas was a possibility there. So I was a little shocked Thielen didn't get dealt at the deadline, but I think it's if he does come back, it could be a positive for Bryce Young because not gonna lie, I would definitely take Thielen over David Moore any day of the week at that position. And now Carolina has I mean, they dealt 2 guys in that wide receiver room. So you're looking at Leggett, Coker, David Moore, Devin Tompkins. Am I missing anyone? Is that the top
But the
4?
problem though with that room though, listen to what you said though. Jalen Coker's a slot receiver. Adam Thielen's a slot receiver. Devin Tompkins is a gadget receiver. David Moore is the only player outside of Xavier Leggett that has experience playing outside. You know what I mean? Like that's what, unfortunately, the way that they built this roster.
Just gotta catch the damn ball.
Yeah, man, catch the ball. I look 100%. It doesn't matter where you can align if you can't finish a play. But when you get rid of Deontay Johnson, you put yourself in the situation. And that's, again, where it all comes back to is roster construction and contingency plans. They didn't have a great one for a lot of this stuff, right? So now we're in this situation. Adam Thielen is going to have to figure out how to.
All right, let's talk about Bryce.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry, you were cutting in and out, so I didn't even know you were talking, so I apologize.
Good.
I want to talk about Bryce Young for a second with the comments today. So obviously he's the starter this weekend. We have Dave Canales. He was not willing to say Bryce Young is the starter after this game. He only committed to him this week. We'll take it on a week-to-week basis. We also had Dan Morgan stop short in saying Bryce Young is the QB of the future. But he also did say that I never opened that door, meaning he never opened that door on a trade for Bryce Young. I didn't want to trade Bryce, and I still don't. I'll let you guys jump in here. That last comment, I don't necessarily know if I really buy he never opened the door on it, because I feel like if the trade was right, they might have dealt him. And that could just be they're trying to clean up, hey, we still believe in this guy. We want him to have full confidence in us moving forward. And I know the reporting out there was, they wanted to give Bryce a second chance at some point. But all indications up until the Andy Dalton car accident, I feel like if there was a trade out there that was good enough, they would have dealt him in the end. So I feel like this was just cleanup mode for Dan Morgan personally. But, to flip that, I am glad that Bryce Young got another start, because there is no question in my mind that this guy should be the starting QB the rest of the year for this team in a lost season. So I'll leave it at that. I'll let you guys chime in.
Yeah. And before I answer and talk about that, I just like to ask Curtis what team does Deontay Foreman start for, and what's his stats been since he's left the Carolina Panthers? Since he took a shot at me, I had to throw that in there. I wanted Miles Sanders, but he sucks. Okay, now I don't want him anymore. Okay, yeah, you were right about that. But Foreman hasn't been much better either. I think he's with the Browns as like a third string running back right now. So in regards to Bryce Young, I mean, everybody knows how I feel about Bryce. I think the benching did him well, but I didn't agree with it. Kind of similar to the Miles Sanders situation. Looking back on it, it was probably what was best for him. But at the time, I thought you just let him play through his struggles and let him regain his confidence on the field. I think I tend to believe Dan Morgan in the Bryce Young situation with the trade rumors. I think your point, Curtis, about if the trade was right, they would have sent it. I think you could say that about every player on this team. If someone called offering 3 first-round picks for J.C. Horn, he'd be gone, right? I don't know that they were out there shopping him and saying, hey, Miami, what would you offer for Bryce? Hey, Oakland, are you looking for a quarterback? We got this guy here. I don't believe they were shopping him. I believe, if I had to guess, this GM believes more in this quarterback than the head coach does, which is probably an issue moving forward. But I think when Dan Morgan says that the door wasn't open to trade Bryce Young, I lean more towards believing him on that than not, just based off of kind of his track record of being more of an honest guy and my feelings towards him as a GM currently. So, yeah, I think, of course, moving forward, it's the best thing for the organization to continue to play Bryce Young, and he has proven that he has taken steps forward. Now, if he came out last week and the week before and looked like week 1 and week 2, then that's a completely different conversation. But he has continued to progress from his first start to his second start, and now he's getting a third start. So I think he's going to continue to look better and gain more confidence. And this is his third offensive play caller and third or fourth, you could even argue, in 2 years. He's not a veteran quarterback, so he's getting used to a new system still. He's played not a lot of games in this system, live fire, and I think you're going to continue to see more comfortability with him in this system, with Canales calling plays. We saw improvement with even down to getting the play call in on time and not getting to the line with 5 seconds left for Bryce to make his checks and call someone in motion. I think we're going to continue to see that progress week in and week out. And in my opinion, you start him for the rest of the season, no matter what. If he does go back into this shell that we saw in week 1, week 2, then you have your answer at the end of the season and you're looking elsewhere. You're in the draft or you're looking for a veteran free agent. You have your answer. And I think that's what this team needs after this season. Are you moving forward with Bryce, or are you looking to add a different quarterback after this year?
I'll keep it super concise and simple here. I think that what both of them say about Bryce Young is vague and leaves plenty of room for interpretation and for changing their mind on either side. And I think that comes from not being well equipped with their messaging at the beginning of this fiasco. I think that they are learning that if they have a hard line, they are going to end up being wrong about it. And so I think that they are straddling fences. Every fence they find, they're hopping on, they're riding it like dollar bill. And I think that that's not the wrong move, because Bryson, you said it, maybe this GM likes the quarterback more than the coach, or maybe neither of them like the quarterback. And you weren't going to get a real return on Bryce Young before the deadline.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't get a terrific return on him offseason either. But I'll tell you what, if you were able to sell it as he's learning and he didn't have to play, I don't think they wanted him to play, man. I think that Andy Dalton's injury changed a lot of this.
I agree.
I think that if Bryce Young has a terrible game against the Giants, I don't want to put that in the universe, but if he has an absolutely atrocious game against the Giants, I also won't be surprised if they switch again. And that is probably the most detrimental thing that can happen. So I agree with you, Bryson. What I would have loved is a true vote of confidence.
Yep.
That if you believe in him at all, you'd say he's your starter going forward for this year, not for 2025. Dude, you don't have to say he's a franchise quarterback. Make him the starter for the season where you're 2-7, and he's got one of those wins. What do you got to lose? So yeah, that's. I definitely know that they are trying to not get themselves jammed up. Look at how they talk about it, man. He said he didn't open the door to the trade right now, but then they said, so is he your quarterback? Like, you guys are happy for him going forward. And he's like, we're evaluating. Then asked, would you take a quarterback in the top 5? Well, I mean, we're evaluating everything. That's not how somebody talks about somebody that they truly 100% are committed to. That doesn't mean he hates him, but they're not committed to him by any means, in my opinion.
I wanted to ask you guys this quickly, and Ricky, we'll start with you, and then we'll get into statistically speaking. Do you think Canales is playing this week by week, who's the starter, to motivate Bryce and put pressure on him to perform? Or do you think this is just Andy Dalton could be the starter next week and they just really don't trust him at this point?
I think that argument about this is motivational, I think it's very middle school, high school, and even maybe a little bit collegey to do this whole thing about a guy who has told you 1,000 times how he's not externally motivated and for this to be the way that you think you're going to motivate him, it just doesn't connect with me, man. That doesn't make sense. Now, could it be? Sure. Of course it could be. Like, it could be a ton of things, man. Like, maybe Canales is some sort of savant that does know, hey, look, you know how to get under Bryce's skin? You know how to get fire under him? Is make him think you don't like him. He's the nicest, sweetest guy in the world. Make him feel like he's just not good enough. I don't know, man. There's a lot of weird things in the world, right? Like, maybe that's Bryce's. I don't see it. I think that Bryce was, you heard the reports, it sounded like he was hurt by the benching originally, caught off guard, shocked, all those kinds of things. So I think that playing this hardball, if that's what you're trying to call it or whatever, right? And not you, Curtis, personally, but like people that want to say that, I don't think it works. I think the best thing for Bryce Young is to feel like people believe in him and then insulate him with talent and then tell him sink or swim. On you now. Go get it, bud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's semantics at this point, and I'm getting tired of it. And I hope after this week that the tide turns and they fully commit. But we'll see what he does this weekend in Germany against the New York Giants. But let's move on to statistically speaking, and we obviously got the Giants coming up this week. Ricky, I'll let you go for the first one here.
Love it, Ricky.
Let's start with the offense, the little Giants, baby.
Yeah. And it's more fitting. It's more fitting for the offensive side of the ball than it is for the defense because they got a little bit to them. But y'all know me, man. I like to poke the bear a little bit. 15.4 points per game. That's dead last, bottom of the league. 306.1 yards per game. That's 26. 191.4 passing yards per game. Good for 23rd in the league. 114.7 rushing yards per game. It's good for 19th, but their ground game has had a little bit of rejuvenation with Tyrone Tracy, the rookie out of Indiana, converted wide receiver into running back. Negative 0.15 expected points added per pass. That's tied for 23rd in the league. Negative 0.07 expected points added per rush. That's 21st. So this is not an efficient offense. 13 offensive touchdowns. That's tied for 30th in the league. And 58.9% of the time they pass. That's tied for 9th. That's a little bit more of that game script that you also see with the Carolina Panthers. Now, we're not very stubborn with the run like we're supposed to be, but they also have trailed in a lot of games and have had to make fourth quarter type comeback situations. Well, not realistic comebacks, but trailing late in the game, so they throw the ball. Let's go. Can we get right into the offensive keys here and move this show along? Let's do the first guy you'll see on that screen next to number 6, which is not Miles Sanders. Please don't hate that 6 as well. That is Tyrone Tracy. That's the rookie out of Indiana. 29 rushes of 10-plus yards. That's tied for 17th. So not an overly dynamic when they had Devin Singletary as their feature running back. Motor is a very resilient guy. He can fight through tackles, but he is not a dynamic running back. 13% of the time, the team run stuffed rate. Now, that means that a rush went for either 0 or negative yards. That is tied for 3rd best. 995 team yak. That is 16th in the league. 8 passing touchdowns, tied for 29th. That is a not a great stat for Daniel Jones, the Duke product. Malik Neighbors is the guy that I would focus on when you look at these New York Giants, especially on offense. This dude is one of those, like, you can't say shit about it that's bad type of players. This is a dynamic wide receiver. He is a true wide receiver 1. Mega personality, everything that you want. He has a receiving EPA of plus 33.2. That's tied for 5th best in the NFL, or that is 5th best in the NFL. And it's on 84 targets, which is 2nd most. And he missed 2 games. Like, this dude is a force. And it'll be interesting to see what they do schematically with Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, and I think when talking about the Giants, I feel like we play them quite frequently, as the Carolina Panthers do. Daniel Jones is a threat to run the ball, and he always has been. I feel like specifically versus the Carolina Panthers, but throughout his career, he's been a decent run threat. He's coming off a decent game versus the Commanders, which the Giants only lost by 5 points to the Commanders. We saw what happened with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, and versus the Panthers. But But he had 54 yards rushing and a touchdown. He threw for his first passing touchdown at Giant Stadium, MetLife. I think in like 600 calendar days. So he's coming off a decent game. I do think he is I do think he is a shit quarterback because he came from Duke. I don't think any prospect Duke's put out at quarterback has ever panned out. So I think he's another member of a long list from Duke players that just don't work in the NFL. Unfortunately, their football program isn't a good one there, and unfortunately, they just don't pan out in the NFL. Sorry to tell you that, Curtis, but it's the truth. And but yeah, I mean, Malik Neighbors definitely concerning, but fortunately for us, we have one of the best cornerbacks in the league that's probably going to be matching up with. I don't know so much shadowing him because I don't think Evera likes to do that with Horn, but he definitely has the ability to do that if they feel the need to. And I think even guys down to like Wan'Dale Robinson, who's had a pretty good season, a good wide receiver. I feel like him, Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy that you mentioned, the running back, and then Daniel Jones' running threat. It could be a little bit of a concern for this defense.
A lot of underneath stuff to Wan'Dale Robinson too, and I think that's where you're going to have to look at that Dane Jackson and the onus on Trevin Wallace playing coverage, whether it's zone or whatever, in that second level. Wan'Dale Robinson works in those void spaces. That is where he makes his nut. So you're going to have to really take a look at that. Curtis, before you go, I just want to remind everybody that there was and Bryson, I know your name is Bryson and not Bryce, but there was a quarterback that played for Baylor named Bryce Petty. And I did start hearing little shades of Bryson Petty there when he went on that whole Duke run there. So I'm really enjoying just this like awfulness that we have had collectively as a group tonight, man. I really think that this is a fun dynamic.
I gotta point out Alex's comment because it had me dying laughing while Bryson was talking. So I apologize with my laughs, but God damn it, Alex, you got me on that one. I couldn't keep it together. But this offense, fun fact, Tyrone Tracy was part of the trade for Brian Burns. The Giants got him, I think, in that 5th round that the Panthers gave up. One big thing for me this week is the status of Darius Slayton. He's in the concussion protocol. From what I've seen through reports, he didn't practice Wednesday, and he might not even travel with the team Thursday night. So I think that is going to be big for them. One guy we're not talking about on offense, and I get it. He's kind of in the back end of that depth chart, but ISM. Is this an ISM revenge game against Carolina? He is over there. Jalen Hyatt. We can't forget about him.
We can't forget about him because everyone else does, including the New York Giants. So,
well, it's Carolina. So, fair
enough.
Let's talk about 84 of the Saints last week, lighten up this defense for a little bit there. So, that's something to keep in mind. I'm also curious about Jon Runyan because I don't know if you guys watched HBO's Hard Knocks, but they were considering Robert Hunt at guard early on in the offseason. They ended up putting money on Jon Runyan and they ended up getting him. So it'll be interesting to see how those two guards play out because it's kind of, a good comparison of, the Giants went in this direction, Carolina went in another, obviously, paid handsomely for Robert Hunt. But I'm just curious to see how that plays out. Greg Van Roten, a former Carolina Panther. Curious to see. I know he has been, I think he had a rest day maybe at practice today for the Giants. So that might be one to watch along that offensive line. But to Bryson's note, my biggest concern, honestly, and as sad as this sounds, is Daniel Jones. Anytime he has played Carolina, he has lit up the box score in the run game. Every single time. And the way Carolina has played running QBs, it scares the hell out of me, to be totally honest with you. And that is probably my biggest worry going into this game outside of Malik Neighbors. And we know JC Horn, which still boggles my mind that that guy does not shadow the best wide receiver in an opposing team, of what he'll do, Malik Neighbors, against Mike Jackson. I know Mike Jackson had, he made some plays this last week, but when he's going up against one of the top wide receivers in this year's draft, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding. So those are the guys I'm really looking out for, and what I feel like can cause some issues for the Panthers defense. But if we want to move along here, we can go to the defensive side.
And I'll answer these two things real fast, like in one sentence answers. Harrison asks, is Jonathon Brooks going to have a limit? We're not even entirely sure that Jonathon Brooks is going to play. He's been activated to the 53 roster, but there's no guarantee he even plays. And yeah, I would imagine there's a cap of some sort, whether it's a full go, but Chuba Hubbard is still in the picture, or we're going to ease him in. And then I would look at Theo Johnson here. JP brings it up. Theo Johnson is the rookie tight end out of Penn State, had the perfect RAS score, which a lot of times can be indicative of success at the tight end position, especially in certain fields. He has come on. He's a good pass catcher. He's a threat, so that is something to keep an eye on. Let's get into the defensive side of this thing. So for the defense, the New York Giants defense, Curtis, if you'll blow that up for me, man, I would appreciate it. We've got 22.4 points per game that they are allowing. That's 15th in the league. And their defensive unit is better than the offense. So this is where I think if fans are nervous, this is where the nerves come from. 334.1 yards per game allowed. That's 19th. So most of those are middle. But if you look at these next few, there's a couple of tells. 191.6 passing yards per game, and that's 9th in the league. They're not a bad pass defense. And a lot of that actually is not even because of their first-round pick of last year, Deonte Banks, kid out of Maryland. Adoree Jackson's playing pretty well. Their rookie safety, Tyler Nubin, is playing pretty good football. 142.6 rushing yards per game, though. I feel like every episode that we do this, guys, we talk about the fact that there is a great opportunity to lean into the run game because the opponent has been weak defending the run. And Chuba Hubbard every week, though, is like almost seems like he is pining for it. Like, dude, give me the rock, man. You can see he's ready to just break free. I hope this is the week that they do it. Control the clock, mitigate that pass rush of the New York Giants. That'll be on the next slide. That it is a huge benefit to the Carolina Panthers to run the football this week against the Giants. Six yards even on pass yards per play. That's tied for 12th. 5.2 rushing yards per play they allowed. Again, the worst in the league in how many rushing yards they allow per play. The worst. 18 touchdowns allowed. That's tied for 11th. So this is the bend, don't break defense that we are also very similar or used to seeing in Carolina. They might give up some stuff, but they don't allow a whole lot of visits to the painted grass. 53.5% essentially opponents are passing it against the New York Giants. I talked about this next slide. They have 35 sacks as a defense. That is the best in the league. That is something to take note of. And the deeper analytics to that, they've had 103 quarterback pressures. That's only good for 16th in the league at a 33.8% quarterback pressure rate. So they're not like just dominating and getting after every single snap. But look at this, 11.5% sack rate. That is the best in the league. They are finishing plays. How many times in the NFL do you watch these football games and you see guys can get after a quarterback, but they can't finish the play, right? They have pressure that comes from the interior. They have pressure that comes from outside. We're very familiar with Brian Burns. Dexter Lawrence is an absolute menace inside. He is going to give, whether it's Cade Mays or Brady Christensen, if Icky could go at left tackle, he's going to give fits that interior offensive line. 40 rushes of 10-plus yards allowed. That is 30th. Once again, I am banging the Chuba bell. Run the football. And if Jonathon Brooks gets his first action, holy shit, let him get a big dynamic play. That is in the cards, I think. If he gets, let's say, 7 to 12 carries, I think he's got a real possibility of busting one. 2.13 yards before contact per rush allowed. That's 28th in the league. They blitz on 30.2% of possessions. That is 10th most in the league. They've allowed 7 rushing touchdowns. That's good for 12th, and 11 passing touchdowns. That's good for 10th. So that's the rundown about what these New York Giants do on offense and defense. I think that there is a chance for the Carolina Panthers, but I think that there is also a very clear game plan that they should be approaching this with, in my opinion.
This defense scares the hell out of me, like it does almost every week. I feel like I say that every week. And it starts up front. Brian Burns, it's a revenge game. We know what former Carolina Panthers do when they play this team. DJ Moore showed out, Steve Smith, blood and guts. I mean, you can go on and on and on with these former players playing the Carolina Panthers. I wouldn't be shocked if Brian Burns has multiple sacks in this game. Dexter Lawrence is a menace. Azeez Ojulari, I think, is a really good player. I could go on and on.
Bobby Okereke, their linebacker, is also terrific as well.
Like this defense, this is a tough test. This is more on the other side of what Denver had, I think, against Carolina. I think this is going to be a very low-scoring game, if I'm being honest with you, and we'll get into predictions later. But it's going to be tough sledding, and we literally talk about this, and I hate it, but we talk about this every single week. Run the ball with Chuba Hubbard, and what do we see? He might get a carry on first or second down, and then we put in number 6. And then we put in number 6 again on third down. Run the fucking ball with Chuba Hubbard. You said you want to keep J.C. Horn. You said you want to make Chuba Hubbard and Horn a cornerstone of this team. Well, then show it on the field. Run the ball with the dude. He's a top 5 back in the NFL right now. Run the fucking ball with him. And Dave Canales, I don't know what it is. If he's Miles Sanders is there, he's got some deep dark secrets about this team. I don't know, but it doesn't make any sense why this guy is on the field as much as he is. And they need to take advantage of a running back. Canales didn't have this last year with Hubbard in Tampa Bay. Hubbard is having a lot of success along with the offensive line and their blocking, that there is this guy's getting 4 to 5 yards a crack every single time he gets the ball. That's a little joke. Crack, cocaine. Okay, never mind. But run the damn ball with Hubbard. It makes no sense at all. I mean, I would be first, second down, third, like, keep running the rock with this team. We talk about it every single week, and they don't do it. I hope they get back to that this game. And if we do see Jonathan Brooks, I hope they do take advantage, because it's so frustrating when it seems like Hubbard could literally play almost every down, and he's getting pulled every other play. And that is, I don't think you can, as a running back, and establish anything consistently when you're switching in and out all the time. And that drives me nuts. That is one of my biggest gripes about Canales, is he does not allow these guys to gain and have an establishment in this run game before he pulls them right away. So I'm rambling. I'm sorry, but that's one of the things I think they need to take advantage of. Bryson, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm laughing at Alex in the chat. I feel like he's just having a conversation with himself when he puts a chat in there. He's like, it doesn't. He's funny. I love it. I am not concerned as much about the Brian Burns revenge game.
Oh boy.
He has 5 sacks on the year for a team that has 30 sacks. I remember the excuse being in Carolina that I didn't have help opposite of him. He is on an extremely talented defensive line. extremely talented, and is still not putting up numbers to an elite level like he's being paid, quite frankly, in New I almost said New Orleans, in New York. He may come away with a sack, he may not. I don't think it's going to be some dominant performance that he's got 3 sacks. He's going to pretty much his season total in one game, and he's definitely not going to defend the run very well. We know that, and evident to Ricky's numbers.
I disagree with you.
He shared with us this defensive line is not good at defending the run. I think the stats back up my opinion, Curtis, but you can disagree if you want. So yeah, I think he's gonna maybe make a play here or there. He's gonna be Brian Burns, but overall, I'm not sure he's gonna affect the game very much, like to a point where it's gonna change the outcome of it. But I mean, my biggest concern, like Curtis mentioned earlier, is Daniel Jones and his running ability. I mean, frankly, that's my biggest concern. And then our head coach committing and sticking to the run, which he has failed to show us that he can do to this point in the NFL season. Week in and week out, Ricky, Curtis, and Bryson are on Panthers on Tap talking about how there is a clear and obvious game plan to exploit other teams' defenses, and that is running the ball. Week in and week out, Dave Canales gets on the football field at 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. or 4:25 p.m. because we ain't getting no damn primetime games in Carolina, and does not run the ball as much as he should. So, unfortunately, I don't believe it's going to happen, even with Jonathan Brooks coming back. Until I see it, until this coach proves it to me, I'm not going to say it's going to happen. But clearly, that's the route you need to take to exploit this defense, who has a good secondary, who has shown through the stats that Ricky provided to us, they can defend the pass to a high to moderate level and cannot defend the run to save their lives. So run the ball, play action, make things easy for Bryce, continue to stack progress, and hopefully you come out of here with a win.
Don't worry, Miles Sanders will get it on every 3rd down, so we'll be ready for that one. Do we want to go to the Panthers here, Ricky?
Yeah, we might as well, right? So we're going to keep this simple, man. And look, this isn't like a negative thing because they did win the football game, but we're still 2-7. So until we start putting some shit into motion, man, we're going to do these one slides and get through there quick. But the Carolina Panthers did beat the New Orleans Aints 23-22 and had players apologizing to the city. Dennis Allen got canned. The current record is 2-7. These are the facts for the Carolina Panthers. And we'll add in a little bonus point here that Bryce Young played well to very well, in my opinion, and that he had earned a 3rd straight start despite maybe the first couple coming out of default. This one you can't take from him. This kid earned the ability to go out here and play this island game out here in Germany where the entire football world that is interested in watching football at 9:30 on the east side, 6:30 in the morning on the west coast here in the Americas. That's what you're watching. You're watching this Carolina Panthers football team, and you're watching it be led by Bryce Young. And I'm going to tell you something, man. I'm fucking excited for it.
Amen. I want to ask you guys this. If you had to compare, and I've seen this conversation on Twitter, that's why I'm asking. If you had to compare Bryce Young's game against Green Bay last year and this one this past weekend, which one is the better one, in your opinion? Bryson?
That's hard. I mean, if you're box score watching, obviously Green Bay's the box score looked better. But I think overall, when you take into consideration the situation, the environment surrounding him, I feel like his game last week was his best game he's put on film in the NFL. Game-winning drive, first victory formation in his career. making throws that we haven't seen in a long time from him, putting confidence, back into his play on the field. I think box score wise, Green Bay was better, but this game was more important and just like overall with throws better than what we saw in Green Bay. So I would say, this past weekend versus the Saints was his best game in the NFL.
If it hadn't have been the Chuba touchdown that sealed the deal here, if it had been a Bryce Young throw, it wouldn't even be a very difficult conversation, to be completely honest, in my opinion, like the comparison. Because what you think about with the Green Bay game was that late touchdown in the fourth quarter on the run, perfect ball placement, back of the end zone. That's the first thing that comes to mind, right? Because it's Bryce Young making a play in the clutch when he had to do it. But he also made 2 clutch plays to get that drive down to the end zone in this game against the Saints. To get that run to that place, he made terrific reads and terrific throws. And where he did it differently than Green Bay. He took more shots in this game against the Saints. He took more downfield shots. He trusted his guys, I think, more so. And he got a win. And I think that he was very directly responsible for the win against these Saints. Not saying that he was the only guy, but he played a very big role. The same way that I think that in Green Bay, they would have lost that game by 20 if Bryce Young didn't play the way that he played. So that's a great comparison, but I'm going to give it to him on this one, to be completely honest, man. Every single circumstance put in the hat, he had every reason to not play well in this game. That was at the end of the year in a lost season. He had a lot of pressure on this one because he was fighting for an ability to make another start. And he came out, he answered the bell, and he was throwing haymakers. And I am encouraged, and I want to continue to be encouraged. So I'm going to ride that momentum train with this win.
And before you go, Curtis, I would argue that the play calling in versus the Saints was worse than the play calling was versus Green Bay.
Terrific point.
Bryce had to overcome the play calling versus the Saints and still had, in our opinion, mine and Ricky's opinion at least, a better game than what he had in Green Bay.
Terrific point. I love that.
I would agree with you guys. And it's based off of the weight of this game for Bryce Young. I honestly think if he would have lost this game, I don't know if he's a starter this week. I really don't. And which is sad. It really is sad of how lost this season is. We're going to go with a 37-year-old veteran quarterback who is coming off of a thumb injury. But the improvement he has made over the last 2 weeks and the throws he made in this game were insurmountable for his confidence and the staff's confidence in him for him to get another start. And it goes back to a throw that I haven't brought up, and I talked to Ricky and Bryson about this. It was in that final drive. He made a layered throw to Leggett to keep the drive rolling. And let's not forget, Carolina, and we didn't even talk about this yet. Carolina, with 5 minutes left, came out and was passing the ball when they had success with the run. They went 3 and out, punted it, and thank goodness the defense saved them with the 3 and out. And then they got the ball back, and what did Canales call on the next 3 or 4 plays? Pass after pass after pass. And Bryce Young, I remember turning to Bryson during the game. He made a nice layered throw over the linebacker. He had a safety over the top, corner and coverage, I think, on Leggett, and just beautifully put it in to Leggett. And that play right there cemented that drive for me of holy shit, this guy is growing. And it was perfect. He made play after play to set up the Chuba Hubbard run that ultimately they scored on. But I do think as the weight of this game for Bryce Young's career against a divisional opponent, to beat a divisional opponent wholeheartedly was way bigger than putting up 30 points against a awful defensive coaching staff in Green Bay. The fans will tell you about it last year. And I get it. If he had about 20 more seconds against Green Bay, they might have won that game. But this one I felt had just way more weight and showed the growth in Bryce Young's game after the benching. So I think hands down, this one has more weight and honestly will go down, I think, in a statement game and possibly turn around his career, fingers crossed, in Carolina. So let's get to the bets for this week, and then we'll do predictions. Here it is. Alex took advantage last week. This is our parlay through Bet 365. I will start. I have Sam Darnold. Let me pull up just to make sure I have this right. He is playing the Jaguars on Sunday, and I believe it's at Jacksonville. But Sam Darnold is 6 of 8 of throwing 2 touchdowns or more. So he's in the last 8 games, he's thrown 2 touchdowns or more in 6 of those games. So a pretty damn good percentage. And I think of the last 2 weeks, he's thrown 2 touchdowns or more. So I'm taking Sam Darnold this week against a very poor Jacksonville team. I know it is in Jacksonville, so the weather, it's going to be a little bit warmer. But I'm going to give Sam Darnold the edge here. I think he can get 2 passing touchdowns against a struggling Jacksonville team. So that's what I got this week for my parlay. Bryson, why'd you take the Panthers?
Yeah. Why'd I take the Panthers? First of all, I feel like 6.5 points is way too much for the Giants. They are as well a 2-7 team who have had struggles in a lot of areas we just highlighted with Ricky's very poignant stats that he shared with everyone. I understand it's in Germany. I don't know who's home, who's away, who's going to have more fans in the stands, whatever. But I like Carolina's chances in this game to win. So 6.5 points, in my opinion, is a lot for the Giants to be favored by. So I felt like that was too many points for me to pass up at -110, and I think it's a pretty safe bet. If the Panthers don't win, then I see them losing by 3-4 points. I don't see this as a touchdown plus game for the Giants if they win.
And then I've got Jamar Chase over 6.5 receptions against the Baltimore Ravens. So T. Higgins is likely to be out of this game. They just lost their rookie tight end Eric All Jr. To an ACL injury. Mike Gesicki will be involved. Jermaine Burton was a healthy scratch last week because of disciplinary team reasons. Sounds like he's probably going to try to give it a go. And I think that the reason they're going to try to give it a go is because they're a little bit desperate. And when you look at this Baltimore Ravens defense, very good against the run. This is a funnel defense. You see teams funnel targets to their pass catchers against the Baltimore Ravens. This Ravens offense is absolutely dynamic, and they're finding their stride. Todd Monken, there's not enough conversation about the job that Todd Monken is doing in Baltimore, in my opinion. He is doing a lights-out job with that crew over there. Zay Flowers is dynamic. Deontay Johnson is likely to be integrated a little bit more. Rashad Bateman has become a threat. Isaiah Likely, I think that he's a little bit banged up. I'm not sure if he's going to play or not. Mark Andrews still has it. And then don't forget about that guy, Derrick Henry. This team is going to be able to put up points against that Bengals defense. So Joe Burrow is going to be throwing the ball. And if you tell me that he doesn't have T. Higgins, you tell me they're trusting Jermaine Burton and they don't have Eric All, who was getting like 5 to 6 targets a game. I think that Jamar Chase, who has had over 7 in the last 2, I think he's looking at a pretty big target share in this football game. And the only way that I see that going poorly is if they end up being in a very low-scoring game. But you tell me, do you see Joe Burrow in this Bengals team and Lamar Jackson in that Ravens team in a 10-13 struggle on Thursday night? I rest my case, Your Honor.
All right, let's go to predictions. Oh, wait, before we get off this slide here. So again, Alex, he tailed us last week. Made a pretty good chunk of change. If you guys are the betting folks out there, we would appreciate it. It's signupexpert.com/Panthers. That'll take you to our designated homepage. It has every single sports book in your area that is available to you. You sign up through that link, and then you start betting. This is our parlay for this week. You can take advantage of this. If you don't like this one, you can use another one. We fared pretty well last week. I will say I think I'm either heating up or on fire at this point, or at least my picks over the last couple of weeks. So again,
like NBA jams or something, man. Your mic gonna start catching on fire when you talk.
Yeah,
Beer pong.
Or my beer.
Nah,
My beer might start turning on fire.
Hey, there you go.
I don't know. But again, it's signupexpert.com/Panthers. Go to that link, and then you can click on any sports book. They're all available, so you don't have to go out and download all the apps. They'll take you to their designated pages. So we would appreciate it if you guys do that. Let's get into our predictions for the week. Who wants to start?
I'll take it away because my prediction last week was fire, boys.
Yeah, it was
Fire. I pulled a quote. I rewatched it. I pulled a quote.
Oh boy, here we go.
Last week, okay. Bryce Young's best game of the season is what I predicted in that game. I predicted the game to be 17-16. The Panthers win by a point. Panthers won by a point. I think the Panthers are going to win again, boys. I really do. I think Bryce Young is taking steps forward. I think getting these guys back on offense and Jonathan Brooks and hopefully Wanham and the safety, he's escaping my name or escaping my brain. His name is the safe Jordan Fuller. And a couple of other players, getting those guys back is going to be instrumental as well. I don't have a lot of confidence in the Giants as a threat to blow us out like these other teams that are good teams have done. Unfortunately, like the Commanders or the Saints week 1 or whatever it may be. I think that the Giants are a formidable opponent for the Panthers. And I think the Panthers are possibly going to have a 2-game win streak after this game in Germany. And I predict that they are going to have a 2-game win streak after this. I have the Panthers winning 20-17.
I do agree with you. I think it's going to be low scoring. My biggest concerns, like I said already, is Daniel Jones and his run ability. I think Carolina is going to struggle with that. Tyrone Tracy has had some flashes for the Giants in the run game. That worries me. And if a team other than Dennis Allen can't figure out you need to run the ball, they would be smart in pounding the rock. And then how does Malik Neighbors stack up against Mike Jackson when he's not being covered by J.C. Horn? All those things factor in of concerns for me. And this is a Brian Burns revenge game. I do think he's going to ball out. And I think it's going to be too much in the end for Carolina going all the way to Germany. I mean, I hope they show it. It looks like they're going to be playing in black helmets. They've been practicing in them. I don't know what jersey combo they got this week. But I think in the end, it's going to be low scoring. Carolina, the last 2 games they played the Giants, they've lost. They've struggled against them. And as much as the Giants have struggled in a season, they've always seemed the last 2 years to show it against Carolina. And then everyone jumps back on the train for the Giants for 1 week, like most teams do. I'm going to go Well, what'd you say, Bryson? What was your score again?
Panthers 20, Giants 17.
I'm going to go Giants 20, Panthers 13. They lose this game.
I'll keep it short and sweet. I am worried about the Carolina offense getting going against the pass rush of the New York Giants. I think it's very different than what they saw last week, and they squeaked that one out at home by 1 point. I'm going 22-19 Giants in a weird one with weird scores in Germany. I don't think that Panthers fans in the Roaring Riot will be the only people that are drunk. I think we're going to see some weird shit in this game. I think that Daniel Jones might give as many points to the Panthers as potentially Bryce Young gives to the Giants. I think that Brian Burns shows up because he does want to make an impression in this game. If there's one thing about Burns, we saw it last year in the opening game, right? He comes out and he had, 3 sacks, 2.5 sacks and a fumble. When he knows a moment is on him, he can play and he'll live up to it. Here's the one thing I'll say that I could be loving it, but wrong about the prediction. If Bryce Young has the football with less than 3 minutes to go and it's a 1-score game, I'm betting on Bryce Young in that situation. I will live bet that game because when the lights are on, Bryce Young is a gamer. And I hope that they put cold-blooded, man. And I hope they put him in that position out there in Germany so that all of those fans, so that as Americans, I hope that we can atone for the Machine Gun Kelly horse shit that we're about to subject them to at halftime and let Bryce Young really hammer it home for him. I want to see Dave Canales go out there and pound the rock as if it's a perfectly breaded pork schnitzel. I want Bryce Young to put some hot mustard on some drive throws. And then I want everybody to celebrate by chugging out of Das Boot at the end of this game. But I am going 22-19 New York Giants.
I think we'll leave it there. I appreciate everyone, all the super chats today for our first time doing it. We do appreciate it. Big support for our podcast and what we do to bring you guys quality content every single week. So keep it up. We do appreciate it. Again, don't forget, if you are into sports betting, it's signupexpert.com/Panthers for our parlay. I'll be putting that out tomorrow. I think I forgot last week. My apologies. But I will put that out in the morning. And, hopefully we're talking about another Panthers win next week. Enjoy. Again, don't forget, it's a 9:30 a.m. kickoff for the Eastern folks this weekend. Ricky, you got anything cook? Are you going to be cooking up something?
100%,
in the morning?
man. I'll probably 100%. I'm going to wake up. I'll probably either smoke some ribs or smoke some sausages. I'll be up about 6 a.m., 5:30 a.m. I'll be lighting up the offset, finishing up whatever German beers I can get my greedy little hands on. And yeah, dude, we're going to celebrate like we're out there in Munich.
Bryson, what are you doing for food? Are you just sitting around eating a Bojangles box for getting ready for the Panthers?
I ain't no Bojangles box for breakfast, man. Come on. No, Ricky has inspired me. I might do some sausage.
Let's do it. Go for it.
Bratwurst, maybe some. I don't know. I'll figure out something. But yeah, throw it on the Traeger and let it go.
Love that.
Yeah, I'll probably eat a bowl of cereal and call it.
Life of a new dad. That's a smart thing to do. Don't put so much on your plate, bro.
But no, we do appreciate everyone supporting, listening in tonight. We almost hit about 500 listeners this evening, so we do appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week. And as always, keep pounding, and we'll see you guys next week, Wednesday.
Guten Abend.